1, 2.
Hello, hello. We're ready to start. So, good evening, everyone, and very warm welcome to Astonishing Evening's fourth event. It's called Future of Tallinn, and it's an election debate. Those who are not aware about Astonishing Evenings, it's an English language event series which was started by 4 like-minded individuals this spring. So far, we have focused on Estonian culture, history, working culture, so forth. Tonight's event is an exception. It's focused on politics, and it all came about spontaneously just about a week or 2 ago. Many expats were discussing on the social media about the need to decide who to vote for, and many Estonian political parties had not even published their political programs in English. Now I think most of them have done, and at least one of them has published it even in German. So tonight's event is supported by Astonishing Evenings, Telliskivi Creative City, Estonian World, which is an online English language magazine. My name is Silver Tamber, I'm the co-founder of Estonian World, and it's also supported by Erinevate Tubade Klubi, where we are at the moment. The event is also live streamed online by ERR News and Estonian World. Those who have followed ERR News, they've done a great job of publishing overviews of political programs by each party. So who we have, well, first of all, just give you a little brief about what's going to happen tonight. First off, we'll have 2-minute introduction by each candidate. They will introduce their political program, not just for themselves, but also about the political party they represent. The debate, first part of the debate will last about 40 minutes. Then we'll have a short Q&A session. You can ask questions. Then we'll have a short break. Then we'll have a second part, and then again Q&A session, which will be a little bit longer than the first one. I'm just gonna give you a little brief introduction by each candidate. So first off, we've got Yoko, Alender. I've arranged them actually in alphabetical order, so no preference. The Reform Party is represented by Yoko, Alender. Born in Tallinn, she studied architecture and urban planning at the Estonian Academy of Art, and for a number of years worked as an architect and as an advisor on architecture. She was elected to the Estonian Parliament in 2015. She has also lived in Sweden and the United Kingdom. Next one, we have Kaspar Kurve. He is representing the Estonian Greens. After graduating from Tallinn French School, he moved to London to continue his studies in political science and human rights. Having lived in the UK, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Italy for almost 12 years, he just recently moved back to Estonia with only one goal: to make Estonia green. The Social Democrats are represented by Kadri. Kadri is a novelist and filmmaker. Her last film, Mother, was the Estonian official entry to the Foreign Language Academy Award. She has also worked as a journalist and columnist. This is the first time she runs in the local elections, and she says it's because she wants to have more say about the future of her hometown. The Patria and Publica Union, or as we say normally in Estonia, IRL, is represented by Urmas, Reinsalu. Reinsalu studied law at the University of Tartu and before entering politics worked as the director of the Estonian President's office during Lennart Meri's tenure. He was first elected to the parliament in 2003 and worked as Estonia's defense minister from 2012 until 2014. Since 2015, he has been Estonia's Minister of Justice. Abdul Ture is a writer, journalist, teacher, and author. He was first elected to the City Council 4 years ago. He is the first British person and first person of Afro-Caribbean descent to be elected to public office in Estonian history. He's standing on the issues of a decent living for the elderly, flexible citizenship laws, comprehensive services in English for expats in Tallinn, bicycle lanes, and treatment center for drug addicts. And also we have Lance Boxall, who is representative of expat election coalition called International Voices. Lance sent me his profile just about 5 minutes ago, so I just want to read you from my mobile phone. He's originally from London. He first fell in love with Estonia back in 1997 and moved here in 2013. He regards himself as a citizen of Europe, and for some time he has seen Tallinn as his permanent hometown. He helped to create Hääled and is running for election in order to try to reduce the influence of politicians and political parties and increase the involvement of citizens and neighborhoods in creating a city that works better for all of us. He has worked as a speechwriter and government communication professional in the UK and in Brussels. He has also managed pan-European smart city and smart energy research projects and dabbled in tech and startup scenes in London, Brussels, and Tallinn in various capacities. He's currently looking to create a Tallinn-based business which will help EU fund research and innovation projects to meet their communication obligations and find additional partnerships and get their innovations into European marketplace. The entire debate is moderated by João Rey. He is originally from Portugal. He has lived in Estonia for over 10 years, also written many articles, and currently works as a branding and communication expert at Idea agency. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's debate, and by the end of the evening, you will know who to vote for. Here we are.
Thank you very much, Silver. First of all, thank you all for coming, and thank you for the candidates for agreeing to do this debate in English for the expat community. I think it means only one thing, is that we all have an interest in making sure that the city that we live in, is a good city and gets better. So thank you for participating, and thank you all for coming. As Silver said, the first part of this debate is going to be a short 2-minute intro. Silver was introducing you as, candidates, as people, but we want to hear a little bit about your coalition, your platform, what is the program. So in the good fashion of Estonian startup scene, it's your 2-minute pitch for the audience. A lot of them probably haven't voted yet. How many of you have voted already? Okay, good. I haven't voted yet.
I have as well.
How many of you are undecided on who to vote? Yes, that's why we're here. Okay, good. So let's do the 2-minute thing, and I will start here with Kaspar from the Green Party.
Yep. Is my mic on?
Yep.
Yeah, firstly, thanks very much for inviting us. Secondly, I would like to start with breaking the rules a bit, because in the email that João wrote us, he said that it's not about the ideology. As a representative of the Green Party, for us it's definitely about the ideology. We're the only party whose ideology is relevant on global, national, and local levels. Now, as for our program, we're probably all of us are going to be talking about similar things, so I'm going to try to point out some things that really distinguish us. Firstly, we are the only party who's talking about the basic income, so what we want to do is a pilot program of basic income in Tallinn. Basic income is the future. There shouldn't be a debate about it, and it's scandalous that in Estonia we're not talking about that. So what we want to do is to take 1,000 Tallinn residents, randomly selected, and each of them are going to get 400 euros per month, tax-free. That's the first thing. Secondly, when it comes to education, when it comes to kindergartens, our main goal is to bring organic food to kindergartens and to schools. If adults don't want to eat pure, clean, pesticide-free food, that's absolutely fine, but I think we all agree that the children are our future. You shouldn't do any compromises with the children. So that's what we're going to do in the kindergartens and at schools. Thirdly, as you all probably know, in Tallinn it's almost impossible to be a cyclist. It's really, really difficult to go around by bike. Now, thanks to global warming, or for those who don't believe in global warming, thanks to the changing climate patterns, you see that in Estonia there is almost no winter anymore, so you can go around by bike all year long. What we want to do is to create normal, proper bike roads that are safe to drive. Especially what we want to do is to create parking houses for the bikes in front of the big houses, and especially in front of the stations, in front of the train station and bus stations, so that people's commute can be done in a much, much easier way. Also, as Tallinn is the capital of an e-state, we're all proud that we're an e-state. We want Tallinn to be a proper e-city. So that means that we want Tallinn to be in cloud, literally. That every decision, that every single penny that is being spent is clearly viewed by a resident immediately with a couple of clicks. It's ridiculously complicated in certain matters at the moment. So,
Well done, 2 minutes.
Well, thanks very much.
And now Yoko from the Reform Party.
Yes, hello. Thanks as well for this. I think the fact that we're here like this doing this debate shows that some kind of a change is happening. And our platform is called Future Tallinn, a little bit like this debate today. And we created our vision up till the year 2030, because we think that only looking at 4-year perspective, it doesn't actually give you the whole picture. And the main goal, as I am an architect, I also led the writing of our program or the forming of our vision. I would say is that we want to create a city for people, which means concerns very much also urban mobility that the Greens were talking about. I think it's not only about bike lanes, even though also this is definitely important. I think also it's quite hard to be a pedestrian today in Tallinn, which should almost be a human right, we think. We think both for pedestrians and for bikers, the city space should be actually like this, that you send an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old out with an easy heart and you're not worried, then you know that the space is good for everyone. And obviously together with this, I think also public transit. It doesn't only need to be for free, it needs to actually also work. It needs to be modernized. It's actually also somehow the way the urban transport is viewed needs to be changed, because today still people who do mainly use the car, they haven't changed their mode of transport, even though it is for free. Then the next thing is making a family-friendly city. We have a lot of policies for families with children, concerns also kindergartens, and one specific thing today, the kids who are born into families with Russian national background, their chances to succeed in life, the statistics show, are much less, because the segregation starts from kindergarten base. It's not only about language, it's about social networking, and this is something we want to change to give them equal opportunities. And as a third thing, the tunnel to Helsinki, and this will be done by the year of 2030. This will bring density and definitely a more diverse city. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we go to Abdul from Keskerakond.
Is my microphone on?
I think not, actually. Can you try again?
Is my microphone working?
Can you hear Abdul?
It's on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the most important thing that I have to say is that you should go out and vote. Now, this is something that's become very clear to me, that there are a lot of people in this country who don't want you to vote. And I know this because I put up a note on my Facebook page. And all it was a translation of the elector's card. No commentary. I didn't say vote for me. No opinion. It was just a translation, which I did myself, from Estonian into English. And this got a lot of hate. It got a ton of hate. Right? So there are forces that are trying to stop you from exercising your right to vote. You pay taxes, you have a right to vote. So I will stress, first and foremost, go out and vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for, well it does, but it's more important that you vote. Right? Now I stand for the Centre Party. The Centre Party has the experience and knowledge to run this city. It has a new team, and our mayor is not a politician. He's a brilliant administrator. The Centre Party gets its priorities right. If you look at our electoral platform, the first thing we have on our electoral platform is care of the elderly and helping disabled people. These are the most vulnerable people in our society. And little things matter to them. Just getting from the pavement onto the street, being able to get on a bus, right? These are difficult things that they have to negotiate in everyday life. And these are things that we say, we have to fix these things first, right? Even though it's not fashionable, they're not the majority of our voters, but we get our priorities right. We care about the disabled and the elderly. If we have the Centre Party in power in Tallinn and in the main government, it will provide a synergy, which is essential. There will be a big mess if we have two different parties, one running the city, one running the national government. And next year is a centenary, so it's absolutely essential that we get it right. 10 seconds, right? The Centre Party stands for everybody who lives in Tallinn. They're the only party that have promised to provide comprehensive services in English and in Russian about what is going on in the city.
All right, thank you. And now we turn to Urmas Reinsalu from Järel.
Good evening to everybody. I would say that for expats in Tallinn in these elections, IRL would mean in real life something. And IRL is a member of EPP family. It means like CDU in Germany or Kokoomus in Finland or moderates in Sweden. And our main issue is indeed about growth. And we believe that prosperity is produced from the free entrepreneurship, from the human creativity. And we are against bureaucracy, too tough regulations and rules, and against corruption. And this is actually a key issue for us speaking about the city hall's activities. It is something which reminds to me is a state or town of Central Asia, where we appeared to have two peak municipal officials under the court in corruption charges. This is not normality for a country who now actually runs the EU presidency. And what we believe is a core for growth is a skilled labor force, is a good universal education, and also taking into the consideration fair chances to private education. What is very important is a welcomed foreign investments. And our metropolitan area has to deliver foreign investments, to be an engine for those. And we see this too much passivity today. And I very much welcome the concept of the twin city with the Helsinki metropolitan region. And what I want to say also, we are not the party who is aimed to deliver with your tax money more and more just free social benefits. We believe very much in community-based services. We believe very much in fair rules and fair chances. And let me say that it's very important for us also a chance that everybody is free of charge able to learn Estonian. and this is actually a nationwide program. From the beginning of the next year, we are going in Narva, in eastern Estonia, and also in Tallinn to create Estonian language houses, where is going to be a portfolio of different chances to study Estonian. So if you want to see more taxes, if you want to see more regulations, if you want to see more burden of social benefits, so believe me, IRL is not your option. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Kadri from the Social Democrats.
Yeah, hello. Well, actually, it's interesting that I'm sitting next to Urmas because basically I would like to say just the opposite, that economy might not grow forever, and I think that the future is red-green, because we have to start thinking more about social justice, and we have to also think about green, sustainable solutions. So we cannot live forever in the 90s, what many Estonians do, that, wow, you know, it's great, we have just liberated ourselves from the Soviet Union, and that's it for now, we don't have to change anything. But I think that there's still something to learn from the good old West. So first of all, Tallinn should be green. Social Democrats will make sure we'll protect the recreational areas from being built upon. Every citizen of Tallinn should have a recreational area in no more than 300 meters walking distance from their home. And in order to achieve that, we shall make the parks and public gardens bigger. And hopefully by 2030, public buildings and street lighting system will only be working on renewable energy. We'd also like to support package-free shops in Tallinn, and will install drinking water taps in public areas. And hopefully also by 2030, all the vehicles in Tallinn city center will have zero emissions. Second important point, public transport. Free public transport in Tallinn should be comfortable and safe, and should only use renewable energy. We'll try to modernize existing tram routes and develop new ones. And also make sure that some kind of public transport will be running by night, because at the moment this doesn't exist. Third, kindergartens. In 4 years, we'll try to renovate all kindergartens, because at the moment there's still a lot of disparity there. Some kindergartens are very well made up, and the others, like for poor people, are in quite a miserable state. So this practice should be stopped. And all the kids should have equal opportunities. And then last point is transparency. And this is sort of part of our Smart Tallinn program, that we'd like to make 4 apps, I think, which would be quite helpful for the expats as well, that you could see from your smartphone what exactly is happening with the public funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the last candidate to give his opening statement is Lance Boxall from the Hääled coalition.
Hello, thanks for inviting me. The first thing I'd like to say is not a dig, because I understand most people think this, but you introduced us as international voices, and we're very specifically called international and local voices, and expats, but we'd like your vote. We decided to stand because we think that Tallinn needs to become more international. Not for us, we like it like this, in the sense we chose to be here, but for Tallinn as a whole to cooperate. I said I fell in love with Tallinn back in 1997, that's 20 years ago, and there was so much hope, there was so much promise. I met a very large range of young Estonians. I was here for only a week, but I really met a lot of people. I asked a lot of questions, I talked about a lot of things. About even the beginning of digital Estonia was there with the first digital ISDN exchange on the telephone lines. Really enormous amount of promise. 20 years later, I'm not sure that promise has been fulfilled when you see other cities racing ahead. So I think we come, as a group, as what we stand for in our manifesto is very similar to many of the things I've already heard this evening, with bicycle routes, with pedestrian-friendly sidewalks, with pedestrian-friendly crossings. It takes you 20 minutes to get across half a kilometre of Kesklen sometimes, just because there's so many crossings, and they don't change for you, they change for the cars. That's not right. But I think Tallinn is one of the least pedestrian-friendly cities I've ever come across, and because it has a lovely old town, people think, oh yeah, Tallinn's really sweet because it doesn't have traffic. That's just the tourists. That's the message that goes away. The reality is you're permanently waiting for cars to stop. So as I said, I think we've come to a similar position, but the idea is that cities now, all around the world, are competing for quality of life. They're not just competing on incomes. Yes, incomes need to rise probably in Tallinn, but the quality of life here to attract the best from around the world, so that the startups like TransferWise and Skype do not need to relocate parts of their headquarters elsewhere, so that Tallinn and Estonia Tallinn leads Estonia, not the other way around. I think Estonia has fulfilled much of its promise as a national government and as a country within Europe. I think it's done amazing things, but Tallinn is like 10 years behind this curve, and it should be leading. Capital cities should be at the front. They're the shop window on the country that they rule over. And Tallinn is stuck in the past. Tallinn hasn't changed. Buildings are falling down. The trams make horrible noises. They don't go to the right places. I would love to know the history of the public transport in much more detail. I'm quite sure that they still take people to factories that were closed down 15 years ago. And they take people back to places where no one needs to go anymore. The things do not work. So what we're saying is make Tallinn a modern city that attracts international people more so than the ones that are here right now. Yes, I want your votes, but in 4 years' time, I want the votes of all the new people that have come here, because Tallinn has got better and is attracting more people. We're in competition with Helsinki, we're in competition with Copenhagen, we're in competition with Amsterdam, with Berlin, with London, and with cities all around the world. And Tallinn needs to really get its game up. This has not worked out as it should have done.
Okay, so thank you very much for the opening statements. I hope it's a bit more clear now what the political platforms that we have here represented stand for and what their vision is. To start the debate, I think that's a very good starting point. In a way, Tallinn, as the capital of Estonia, can be seen as a city that's competing with either Tartu or Narva, but it can also be seen as a city that's competing with Helsinki, Copenhagen, Amsterdam. First of all, do you see Tallinn as a city that's competing with these other capitals in the region? And if so, what are some of the measures that your platform has to attract either foreign investments or to attract foreigners to come here to live? So, two-part question. Do you see Tallinn competing with other capital cities in the region? And if so, what are some of the measures that your party has to attract some of the talent? And maybe now, Yoko, we can start with you.
Thank you. Very good question. I think definitely we compete with, actually I would even say that we are part of a region that competes with other regions, because I think more and more it's not states that compete, it's city regions. And therefore I think this, if we look at Copenhagen, Malmö area, what happened with the connection there and how this region started to boom, I think definitely the Helsinki idea is very important for us, and especially with us being an even smaller nation, with an easterly neighbor who we cannot fully trust at the moment, and I think definitely we need to open up connections. And I think for attracting talents, I think the worst parts at the moment for people who have lived in cities, who value the life quality, it's definitely about these things that very much also Mr. Boxall talked about, the quality of life concerning pedestrians, concerning public transit, But also concerning public services, I think there is a lot. We also looked at this app they have in San Francisco, where the OpenGov app, where you can actually really follow these costs. And I think the fact that most of us stressed these issues show that these are really things that are problematic. And actually it's really nice to see that apart from Mr. Turay, I think all of us somehow stressed the similar points, so there is actually a chance that this kind of change will come, and we will, because I think otherwise we really are lacking behind. We are losing our sort of, it isn't enough with the IT brand.
So you would say that, you know, the connection
Quality
with
of life.
Connection with Helsinki,
Yes, and
so
quality
the
of life.
quality of life, and the
Digital
the digital
services,
services.
yes.
Okay, Abdul.
Well, I don't agree with some of the points that Lance made. And this would not be very clear to someone who hasn't been in Tallinn a long time. I've been here a long time, and I came here originally in 2000. And it's unbelievable, the change for the positive the city has seen. It's incredible. I had a friend who came over from England, and he hadn't visited me in 8 years, and he couldn't believe how much the city has improved. I remember when I first came here, I thought it was paradise, but because I saw the potential. I remember walking around Kalamaja, and then Kalamaja was a slum. And I said, oh, it's beautiful. It's between the sea and the old town. I told a friend of mine, you should buy a place here. You know, it would be worth a lot of money in a few years. And he was like, what are you talking about? You're nuts, right? It's a dump. I said, no, it will be developed, right? And I remember this friend told me, not so long ago, you know, the one thing I wish I'd listened to you was I wish I'd bought a place in Kalamaja, right? This town has this event, this whole district, Telliskivi. It's possible because of the development that's been done in this town.
Because of city government.
Because of the city government, of course, because of the city government. And even if you talk about the tram that takes me home is new. And that tram takes you directly now to the airport. That was something that wasn't possible. It didn't happen 4 years ago.
But if we focus the attention to how do we get foreigners to come here, how do we attract this international talent to come here? What are some of the measures that...
I'm coming to that, yeah. But we need more infrastructure development, right? So a key infrastructure development would be something like the City Hall, right? This is a major, important conference and entertainment center, the likes of which do not exist in any other city in the region. There's nothing like it in Stockholm, there's nothing like it in Helsinki, there's nothing like it in Riga, right? That would attract people to this town. Kaspar talked about bicycle roads. That's something that's very personal to me because I was talking to Yoko before we started. So I cycle everywhere, right? I don't use a car, right? I have a car, but I don't use it. I cycle or I take public transport, right? And that is something that we can develop further, which would make the city attractive. So that's something that I agree with.
All right,
absolutely
so
on
bike
Kaspar.
lanes and the City Hall.
The City Hall, also lobby work, which is what I do, to actually attract people to come here by lobbying other cities and saying, yeah, Tallinn is a place to come. But it's also important to build a dialogue with the community so they understand what's going on, right? That they have access to information. And the other parties will not tell you this, right? But I can't speak for Kaspar, but the other parties are quite nationalistic, you know, they're very nationalistic, in fact. And
Sorry, nationalistic, you said?
Nationalistic, right? Yeah, nationalistic. And that's not meant as an insult, that's just true. So protecting the national culture is important to them, which means that they will not provide services in English, because in order to do that, access to information in English, in order to do that, they have to provide information in Russian, and they don't want to do that. Right? And that is an important thing that we need to have. We need to have the city vehicles, right? Tallinn TV, Tallinn also have English language versions of it, so that people know what's going on, and people can make their own decisions.
Okay, just so we're clear, the panelists that we have here, we invited all of them. We also invited EKRE to join, but they said they wouldn't join us. So just so we're clear, we invited these and we invited the main political parties, but EKRE said that they wouldn't join the debate. Urmas, do you bicycle everywhere? Or you drive?
Well, I bicycle around the zoo. I live there, yes.
Okay.
But, okay, Tallinn TV, this is not a place to find information. This is a Putin-style propaganda machine. And I think what we do see is actually a very problematic scheme of power-producing machine we see in Tallinn, that using a Russian-speaking minority and their fears and existence under the Kremlin media control, playing with those emotions, also using a pyramid of city officials. This is actually of perpetuum mobile of power. And it has appeared so that they have now already had fourth time of absolute single power. And we know that this is actually an axiom of democracy, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so those cases which are happened now with city mayor and city council chairman, those are not something exceptional. These are just part of the system. And let me say that speaking about the, with whom we are competing, surely in the Baltic Sea region, the metropolitan city areas are competing between each others. And as we're looking to the Helsinki metropolitan area, it's actually in the European scale, it's a micro-metropole. And so when Helsinki is looking up to the Stockholm area or Copenhagen area, and surely there is actually a clear chance for us to link our powers as a single investment area. And what I believe it's very important that we are having a very unique situation where actually in our capital is living so huge proportion of inhabitants of country. In that sense, I very much agree with that concept that a capital area has to be a pioneer of entrepreneurship, of foreign investments, but it is lazy. It's just relying on the tax revenues it's getting from the inhabitants, and that's all. So the concept of being an engine of growth, this is not a case we are finding in the web page of Tallinn city. If I'm looking to the metropolitan area of Helsinki, there I find actually that I believe this is like a global orientated company which is looking for the skilled people, for the investments from the different type of projects. But Tallinn is just relying on the tax revenues of its inhabitants, and this is not the case of growth, to my understanding.
All right, Kadri?
I think that Tallinn's main plus should be what actually Yoko mentioned, the quality of life, because in this respect we still have a chance. Obviously Scandinavia is quite well ahead, but for example when we compare public services with London, that you have to be very wealthy to even get a nursery place for a child, or you have to move to a very rich area to have proper school for a child. And I think that here, in this respect, Tallinn at least has an opportunity, because we are fortunately still not there. And I hope we never will be there, that we would more stick to the Scandinavian or even to the German model, that everybody has a chance, and those public services are key, I think. That you have good kindergartens, you have good schools available to everybody, and especially I'd like to stress here is that they should be in every neighborhood, or not only in the center, They should be in Tallinn, in Nõmme, in Pääsküla, in Lasnamäe, everywhere. And of course, the other advantage of Tallinn is this Estonian mafia, or digital services that I think they still can be improved. Because my husband, who's sitting there, who's from Britain, he became an e-resident, and we've discovered lots of flaws there as well, or continuous problems logging in with the identity card, and I think that there's many things that need to be improved, but at least they exist. I don't know any other country in the world where you can just send an email to, I don't know, some social service center, and you get a reply in 2 days, sometimes even in 15 minutes.
So we're talking about quality of life and improving the services available for foreigners.
Yes, and also what also concerns Tallinn, and I think opening Tallinn more to the sea and to the culture. So yeah, City Hall was mentioned already, but this whole seaside area should be developed having public interests in mind rather than just some real estate developers.
All right, Lance?
Can you just steal my thunder? Maybe she saw at the top of my piece of paper I wrote beach. I'm sorry, Draco, I know she didn't really. Tallinn is the capital city by the seaside. Would you know that? The only reason I knew that when I first came here back in '97, even though I was here only for a week, admittedly, is because I decided to get a ferry to Finland, and I was absolutely shocked they had ferries, because I was thinking, what? There's a sea here? I mean, okay, I was a traveler, and you don't always know these things, and yes, I had a map, but it's before the internet. But Tallinn doesn't feel like a seaside town most of the time. When you go to what used to be at one point maybe a seaside, everything is falling down. And then when you read about the plans are to build more marinas, more high-rise apartment blocks that are all going to look exactly the same, that are all probably going to be sold to Finnish guys when they have the link. And they're certainly not going to benefit people in Tallinn. And more to the point, it's not just about benefiting people in Tallinn, it's about changing the image of Tallinn. So we have an opportunity, I think, but I know the details here, and the planning rules are difficult, and frankly, extremely right-wing economically compared with most of Western Europe. We were talking about learning from Western Europe earlier, and I think that the kind of absolute property rights that seem to be acquired here are shocking for a city. You live in a city, you have to share the spaces, and if you own a space, you still can't do things that upset your neighbors, because they're your neighbors, and we're all in a city together. So the beach and the redevelopment of there needs to stay a beach. Yes, the Linnahallen needs to be restored. I was lucky enough to go into it before it closed, and I've been back into it recently, and it's not as falling down as it looks. But it's not a single solution to this. But the idea that people buy spaces and then they destroy access to the sea, or they yeah, so Abdul, British people are famous for talking about property prices going up. I'm not sure that's always a good thing. I know it seems to be to British people, and I've probably been guilty of that in the past. But the fact that property goes up doesn't mean that the community has got value from it. It means that individual people have benefited. Yeah. Or individual developers, or people that got a whole load of property for almost nothing in the beginning of privatization.
I definitely agree with the sea aspect. I think Tallinn and many Estonians have a weird relationship with the sea. I don't know if it's from the past that you weren't allowed or whatever it is, but in Tallinn it's just so obvious that it's glaring. I'll just give Kaspar the voice. I
haven't quite finished because more than that, and linked to all that I've said is changing the entire way that the city operates, because it is this idea of buying off votes, like giving different groups different things. And yes, this is how politics tends to work, but in a modern city it needs to be much more organic, it needs to be much more real. And the one thing I'd like to add to that is I see this debate between Estonian speakers and Russian speakers. I know I'm not fully qualified to talk about this, but I have had lots of friends from other ex-communist countries in Europe, so all of them have different versions of similar conflicts. Estonia might have suffered more, I'm sure it did actually. But now, this is in the past. And I see that the Tallinn stuck in the last 10 years, it's like a frozen conflict. You have two halves, two communities, who are each paid off just about enough so that a certain political party could win the elections and then keep on feeding the money to the communities. And nothing gets better that way And one of the great resources of Tallinn is actually the fact that we do have lots of Russian speakers here, and Russian is actually a very international language, and Russian is quite a useful technical language in the tech startup sphere as well. So this is a resource.
Especially if you consider that 40% of the population in Tallinn is Russian-speaking.
Exactly.
And if there's only one party who's addressing this population, then there's no way any other party is going to win. So that's.
But the communities need to be brought together, not like not forced to do one thing or another, but just like the war is won, guys. Estonia is independent, and Estonia is. As I said, I'm not Estonian. I don't mean to belittle all the problems in the past. I really do not. I fully understand as best as I can. But this is a battle that has been won. And it's time to move on. It's time to value everybody that lives here.
It's not over, and not the battle, but they are still separate communities. That's the
But
problem.
they should. But I don't think they should be. I
Absolutely
understand.
not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
More effort.
I'll give the word to Kaspar to comment on the fact of getting Tallinn more attractive to foreigners, and then we can open up the discussion a bit.
Yes, can I quickly comment as well?
Sure.
I really don't want to be that guy, but I have to be that guy because we're, exactly like you said, we're all politicians here, we all know how to speak Indian, but it's not about putting the nice words together. For example, for Yoko, the Tallinn-Helsinki tunnel is potentially a great project. We as Greens have been talking about that as well, but that is not an issue for the local elections. It's not. If this is an issue for local elections, then also I can say that Estonian Greens are going to legalize weed in Tallinn.
Why not? Go for it.
Secondly, just a quick comment on Abdul, to go to voting is exactly, it's very, very important, but the most important thing is that you will make a rational decision. So for all of you who haven't voted, please do check our party programs, again in English, and see which one speaks to you the most. Now, for Urmas, he pointed out about the corruption. The candidate of ERL for the mayor used to be the director of Capo, which is basically the FBI. His job was to get rid of corruption. Corruption is still there. As for Kadri, who said that the future is red and green, 50% I agree with you, but the future is only green, because Social Democrats are the party whose view on human rights is beautiful. We totally agree on that. However, the politics of the 21st century is not going to the left, it's not going to the right, it has to go forward, and this is what Greens is about. Now, Tallinn, are we competing with the other cities in the neighboring areas? Yes, of course we are. We're competing for the tourism, we're competing for foreign investment, we're competing for the bright minds to come to work in here. That's normal. And a lot of the right things have been said. It all has to start with the quality of life. There are no people who are better than others. There are no people who are worse than others. So the city has to be accessible for all the people. All the right points have been said already. However, Estonia is known for its e-revolution, and this is a really, really big thing. But we have to be more innovative. Estonia is a great, and Tallinn is a great place because we don't have a lot of people in here. And to really use the possibilities that the 21st century is offering to us, we can do it. So Tallinn really has to become a place which attracts here the people who are dealing with the issues of the future. We want Tallinn to be basically the Silicon Valley of Europe. That's the entire point. Our society currently is debating about medieval things such as LGBT rights. I mean, it's embarrassing. Whereas we should really, really be focusing about things, like I said, basic income, but we also have to bring international think tanks here, bring conferences here about topics such as transhumanism, CRISPR-Cas technologies, all of these things that are going to affect our lives in the next decade or 2 decades. And really, it's for the city council, it's for all of us to make Tallinn as attractive as possible to the new innovative ideas that the driverless cars are going to be tested here, the first, etc., etc. So the future, Tallinn has to be about the innovation. And currently, I'm sorry, we're not.
I'm afraid the driverless cars you cannot also do without the state politics.
But that might be a fair point.
But I'm with you.
Point.
We can do it together from
but
the
Yoko,
state
actually,
side
you're not the first one and the only one to mention this Tallinn-Helsinki tunnel.
Absolutely.
It appears in some programs.
It's not anything original. It just needs to be done.
And there was also, I went through your party programs. There's a couple of issues that Reformierakond mentions that seem to be under the jurisdiction of the government. Things like regulating traffic, things, the port of Muuga is going to start delivering things.
No,
That's
it's
not,
actually
that's not under
very much up to
jurisdiction.
Tallinn city government to work together with the port of Tallinn, because city government is the one who is responsible for city planning. And that's one of the main problems today, that even though we actually have city government who has the possibility to plan Tallinn, to have a long-term vision, to put out which values we plan Tallinn after and take this responsibility, they haven't done it very much. Tallinn is planned one plot by plot, sort of reactively. But this thing with the Reidi road, for example, is a very good example of this. If Tallinn city government was able to do a better cooperation with Tallinna Sadam and talk to this through, it was long known that actually these freights are going to go out. But they still wanted to go on and do this 6-lane road in the middle of the place, which is going to be the city center. This is not the values we want to base our city on.
It's absolutely scandalous.
Absolutely,
Really.
yes.
Urmas, I had a question for you regarding your program. How do you see that your program differs from that of Reformierakond?
Ours is better. But what I want to say that is more than one half of national GDP is produced in metropolitan area, and our vision is, I think, more comprehensive. We do not look just a Tallinn area, but I think as metropolitan area we have to look broader area. And speaking about the problem, it has been like a refrain for 2 decades. We have to open the sea to the inhabitants. It has been also a refrain for 2 decades that we need more bicycle roads and more very good, useful public services which were meant. But why it hasn't happened? Because it's indeed an issue of priorities of City Council. And I believe also, well, I will not put all the guilty of the centrist party on their shoulders, but I believe there's something also wrong with the level of decision-making of budgetary issues and of rules. Because, yes, we are passing now a local administration reform now over the country, where about 1/3 of municipalities will be remaining. And this is actually for the competitiveness of other regions of Estonia is one of the key issues. But with Tallinn, I see actually, although in international scene it's quite a small town, but I see actually a huge or vast problem of centralization. If I look to the, for example, a Nõmme city district, it's about 2 times bigger than Viimsi, which is, separate municipality. But a level or amount of money of their own decision-making is actually 10 times less to the Nõmme district. And so I believe actually if there is no dialogue chance of that we would have to have also, it's one thing is a centralized city council, but there's also, to my understanding, that there should be a budget to all city districts and their own councils to decide. And to my understanding, in future, it could be so that we are speaking about the Tallinn, where also other municipalities of Harjumaa are members of that. And so there are only strategic issues. We are deciding in the region level. But the local issues have to belong to the local communities to decide. This is actually a case we do not see that the central, you see, the government is not just interested in solving those issues because it is not their vital issue of existence in political sphere.
Abdul, I have to ask you this. So a lot of the parties I checked, and they have this, they have the apps that they want to have apps for people to check what's going on in the city, check how the budget is being spent, check whether the election promises are being kept. So to give some more information to people and kind of transparency. And Keskerakond has had issues in the past, cases of corruption that are currently in court. So what reasons do you think voters still have to vote for Keskerakond despite all the corruption allegations going on? That's my first question. Second question is, would you embrace some of those solutions that are being proposed by the other parties when it comes to transparency, some of these apps that allow people to follow what's going on with the city budget?
All right, well, first I'll address something that my colleague Reinsalu said. He called Tallinn TV a Putin propaganda machine. I object to that. If that's true, why is it that members of his own party, senior members of his own party, and senior members of...
have not been
Sim
giving
Hallas
interviews.
Sim Hallas has been on there. He's one of the founders of the Reform Party.
Maybe it was during the presidential elections,
No.
some kind of...
No, quite recently.
swap-up.
Maybe you didn't watch.
We can get to Tallinn TV later, but
Yeah.
can you focus on the fact, why would people trust Keskerakond despite all the allegations of corruption going on? First part. Second part, would Keskerakond be open to using some of these platforms for transparency and making decision-making more...
Well, all the main parties, there have been allegations of corruption. There's a history of that with every party here.
Well,
Apart for the Greens.
Nobody can even come close to Keskerakond
Oh,
in that respect.
well, because the media don't like...
Is it a competition? I'm not sure. Are
No,
we
no, no,
competing
yeah,
for
yeah.
who has more allegations of corruption?
Yeah, because the media don't like
I
Keskerakond.
think we're doing this.
There are hundreds of people who work for the city. Most of them are not in Keskerakond. Some of them, honestly...
Are you sure? I
Yeah,
think it's
yes. Some of them,
50-50.
yeah, some of them don't even like Keskerakond. How is it possible that all these people are corrupt? What the media does is focus on the one or two exceptional cases. They are exceptional cases.
They
Just
are the
the-
biggest.
just the
They are
mayor
the
and the
biggest, the
leader
most
of the
important people
city
in
council.
city
No,
council.
they're
Yes,
not.
of course they are.
No.
The mayor and the leader of the
He's
city
not.
council.
Both
of them.
He's not.
We cannot
the
even
mayor.
change the mayor
Let-
because
let him-
the other person in
Let him
charge
finish.
is
Let him
also.
finish. Let him finish.
Please
let him
let,
finish.
let me finish, right?
Of course, sorry.
Yeah. Not only is the person they're referring to as the mayor, I won't say who he is because you may not know, but his name's Savisaar, right? But he's not only is he not the mayor, but he has his own separate list, right? And he has his own candidates. I can tell you that he's not someone who's popular with our party at the moment. Let's put it that way. Right? We have a new team and a leadership who have not been accused of corruption. I personally have not been accused of corruption. And ultimately, if you vote, you should vote for your candidate as an individual, as well as voting for the party. That is important.
Are you excluding a coalition possibility with Tallinn and Savisaar's list?
I would prefer to have a coalition with IRL or with
But are you going to use it? Is he going to use the apps? He didn't answer.
Yeah, and when it comes to the transparency.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
All right.
Yeah, I would agree with
Okay.
that. But
Good
it's
idea.
the same. Some of the ideas you'll see are cross-party. I mean, the first thing Kaspar mentioned was bicycle lanes, and I'm like, damn, that's my idea. I'm so
obviously.
keen on that, right?
No, but that's not the point. It's about doing the bicycle lanes. It's not
Why
about Green
haven't you
Party or
done it?
Centre
That's
Party.
also the question
Well,
to
I've
the
only been in this. I've only
Keskerakond.
been in the Centre Party a year, right? So,
All right.
Yeah,
give me
but
a chance.
Keskerakond.
Urmas, you had a point, a comment.
Yeah. Well, the core principle is that in Estonia, looking to the national standards, well, in state level, the average index of corruption is quite relatively low in European comparison. But this is
lower. It's the level of corruption is lower than France.
Let me finish now. But the case with the Tallinn municipality is something, yes, we see it also in some other, Central Asian, Eastern European countries, but this is case where happens, as I said, a witch circle of corruption, of one political power, and this actually needs to be cut. And to my understanding, this is one of the core points of that election.
I get
and
that.
Let me say that
me just
for-
one thing.
It's
Urmas.
very interesting. One example where, official mayor of Tallinn now is Mr. Savisaar. But
He's not the mayor.
But he is.
by the law, he's a mayor,
He
and
is.
so the
He's not
centrist
our
party was so clever how to address the deputy mayor, Mr. Aas, who is now fulfilling the functions, and you fought a new naming of him, that he is an executive mayor. And now we are having an official mayor and executive mayor, something like CEO in Tallinn.
If the Centre Party win, then Taavi Aas will be mayor, not Ego Sapsa.
Okay.
That
Of course,
is
because
clear.
he has another list. He's not even running with the Centre
Taavi
Party. so
Taavi Aas said already during the last election campaign 4 years ago, I am this vice mayor who hasn't yet been convicted or what's it
but
called.
you know, the
Put in
fascinating,
jail.
the fascinating, the
Yes,
fascinating
but
thing
very
for
many
me.
people in his team have. You
No,
cannot go.
who?
How?
Yoko, Yoko.
All of them.
Just
Many
Let
concerning
me just
planning.
make one point. The fascinating thing for me, watching from the outside, is that, okay, the allegations are there. Savisaar has been in power for many, many years. What can be done from the opposition? Because let's face it, the way that I think you're running your campaigns, you're not going to get elected. So what can be done from the opposition? And I'm asking this in sincerity, because either you start thinking of coalitions, or you start thinking what can be done when you're in opposition to stop this sort of corruption to go on. And
Can I just say that to me, all of this bickering about different political parties and things brings me back to one of the reasons why we created Hääled was to say that decisions should be in the hands of citizens. If once you're in a party, you tend to have to do what you're told to do, because that's how you get on in a political party, and therefore, by definition, you are shutting down the conversation. You are closing off a certain element of transparency if it's not in the interests of whichever party. And you can call that corruption if it leads to some bad event, or you can just call it party discipline if it leads to something good, which you think is good, and other people vote for. But at the end of the day, this is still shutting citizens out of the decision-making process, and it is closing down some transparency. And the other aspect of corruption that is much, much worse than whether Mr. Savisaar took all of his 10,000 in cash every month, and that's why he has the cash in his house or not, it's because if you make a decision, it's not the money that a politician might take out for his own party or whatever, it's the fact the decision was made because of that. So citizens have suffered because the wrong decision was made, not because some politician walks off with a few extra €1,000. That's bad. The worst thing is that you have tens of thousands of citizens who have to live with the consequences of a train line that goes in a different direction to what's necessary, or the fact we bought buses that weren't suitable for Tallinn roads, or the fact that train wheels fall off after one winter. This is the problem with corruption. It's the decisions that are made because of it.
all right, I'm going to give the word to Kaspar, and then we're going to open for Q&A from the audience.
Guys, this is fun. Okay. I mean, once again, my question to Mr. Reinsalu is, your mayor candidate was the director of Kapo. It was his job to get rid of corruption in Tallinn. He clearly couldn't do it. What makes you think that your candidate is going to get rid of corruption now? And secondly, in terms of how to fight for the corruption. Like I said, Tallinn has to be in cloud. It has to be simple, the budget has to be there, all the decisions have to be a few clicks away. So each resident at any given time can access this information, see where every single cent is being spent, etc. This is the e-Tallinn. This is what Estonia is about. We have to implement these possibilities.
All right, very quickly, Urmas, and then we open for Q&A from the audience.
Tallinn now is in very grey cloud, or at least city municipality. But when you said about Ravag, so the truth is that the national level, as a government, gives a priorities to the national defense police to deter corruption. So the biggest municipalities is in the priority list. And well, the results are seen, actually. So the results we have seen. But we have to understand that to cut the system of the pyramid of that power, of the corrupted power system, it needs a political will. It is not an issue. We are not living in a Putin's Russia, where actually a FSB director might decide the issues. The issue is actually that the community has to act. And you said that if we all appear to be in opposition, So how we can deter the issue? Well, answer is we shouldn't be in opposition. And therefore I've made a pledge to uniform a united opposition where we will declare jointly that we are ready to perform a change in city
On the second part of the debate, we can talk a little bit more about the coalition. But the point of us being here and having an audience with us is that we can also get questions from the audience. I don't know if we have questions from the Facebook live stream or not.
No, it's going to use the live audience. So when you ask the question, just try to be as specific and short as possible. And please introduce yourself as well. We've got 2 microphones. We've got team member Lene at the back, and I will be here at the front, so I will help you here. So who's first one? Gentleman at the back there.
Aitäh. So 2 quick questions. I keep hearing these points about apps where you want to create apps. Why don't you guys just make the data available so people can build their own ways to visualize it when it comes to transparency on budget? And instead of actually just showing people how you're spending money after making promises about different things, why don't you let people make the decisions yourselves? I mean, so far the only people who really seem to be understanding that is IRL and Reform Erecon.
Can I answer? Yeah. So definitely I agree with IRL on bringing the level of decision back to city district area. We have that also in our program when it comes to, for example, detail planning, also about the budget. And also we have introduced the idea, for example, if you take today North Tallinn, the budget of North Tallinn in a year is about 2.7 millions. Of course, actually it goes also a lot more from the central, which is decided centrally. And we have proposed that 1 million at least, that means that the running of the city district is of course done in the city district, but 1 million will be decided by the citizens. Like they have it in Tartu, they have it in a much smaller scale. It's all doable, but the first part, I think definitely I think it's also up to the city to do also the service design, or obviously to also together with companies who are good at it, because if you only release the data, I think it's also the responsibility of the city to make it accessible in a way that is readable for everyone. You cannot expect for every citizen to be able to interpret big data, but definitely the issue is also
Kadri,
big
maybe
data.
you want to
For
comment
example,
because you had
in
the
this
apps.
program of Social Democrats, there is a public transport app that where you could basically collaborate as a citizen, letting the city government know which routes might be developed, or how at the route level you could decide where the buses or trams should go.
Lance?
Yeah. Next question.
Wait, Lance.
Sorry.
just had a quick-
Sorry.
quick
So
point.
just to say, from the very beginning, we've said that Hääled itself is a startup, and that startups and tech startups in particular should be much more involved in the way the city is run. This has happened in London. There is now a startup accelerator that is just to fund startups that want to do government. So this is not something that cannot be done, because it's already happening, and it's happening in many places. And open data is exactly the way to do that, and open data for transport apps is exactly the way to do that. Otherwise, yet again, you get corruption on hiding things that are late because of targets that are missed, etc., and the data needs to be out there, and the data is then, you can have many competing apps, and people and customers decide which ones they use. That's how the open data works, and it's a standard across Europe. This is being implemented anyway.
Yeah.
It's a requirement.
Quickly.
Yeah, I agree with the point on open data. I just wanted to clarify about the budget thing and about the citizen deciding how to use the budget. It's also written in our program, and I very much like what you said, that the different municipalities should have more rights. The people in these municipalities should have more rights to decide on local matters. So that's why we as Greens are also proposing on local levels basically direct democracy, exactly deciding about the budget, deciding what kind of money, where to put, where to use, where to invest, etc.
Urmas, quickly.
Well, I think the core problem is not that people are not informed now about the corruption or stupid things what the city makes. When we were speaking about the garbage scandal in summer when we're speaking about the municipal shop center started or Tallinn City TV, etc., etc. So the cases is not that there is like a lack of information about those cases. This is not an issue. To put it those, if we put those digital, will it solve something? Well, the solving case is actually the elections or political will, if we accept it or not. And what we believe is diminishing corruption, surely, just opening the data and showing about the, well, if there is a deficit case in municipal resources, whatever it is, so it's very good for the openness is to put the data digital. But what I believe is very important also, and we are a single party who actually is able to see it because we are right of center party. We believe also there is a need of privatization of city-owned companies, and we say it's actually something which makes more openness, it makes less corruption, and makes also more resources for all the social good benefits others are talking.
Abdul, if you want to quickly comment on the open data issue.
Well, the city already does this, but not in English, right? This is the issue, right? That citizen participating in government has been a key thing that Kesk-Hereford has achieved. We've spoken about public transport. Everybody says it's great, we can improve it. But free public transport, and I remember this, was something that was really resisted by Urmas Reinsalu's party and by Yoko Alender's
Why
party.
isn't use
Please,
why isn't it
can I-
used more and more? If it's
It
so
is.
good.
It is used.
But it isn't. It only rise 1%, and that on the behalf of the ones that were pedestrians, not the ones that are driving car.
But let's focus on the question that was asked. So open data.
Open data. It is already in existence, but not in English, right? And this is something that our party has as part of our platform.
I don't think that's the issue. I think that, whether it's in English or in Estonian, it should be machine readable. That's the problem. It might be open because there's a PDF out there, but a PDF is not something that you can plug into, somewhere that you can actually compute and do something with it. So it's about accessible data, not just having PDFs out there. Do we have another question?
Yeah, another question? Okay.
Hi, I'll keep it simple, just show of hands. Kalamaja Beach, who wants to keep this open as a public space and who doesn't?
So Kalamaja Beach, who wants to keep it open as an open space?
Everybody?
I think so. I think everybody.
But you are closing it now.
Yeah, well, look, I'm my own man. Right? I don't have to follow everything that the party says, right? And that was
Which district are you running for?
I'm running for Kesslin.
Kesslin.
Yeah.
Okay. Since that was a very quick question, do we have time for one more, and then we have?
I think so. Yeah. Another question?
One more question. Yeah, there's one right here.
To talk about the elephant that's not in the room. For a lot of us expats, it's strange to live in a country where there's a party that still categorizes according to the color of people's skin. EKRE isn't here tonight, but of course they're a factor in the elections. And there are two parties, I believe, people out of which have said that they'd be happy to enter into a coalition, namely IRL and Reform. And for some of us, I imagine it would be quite difficult to vote for somebody who's okay with that. Can you explain why that's an option to you?
Well, I suppose I have to answer because we are one of them who have said it. I think it's a matter of actually how to break the chain of this absolute power that also Urmas Reinsalu was talking about. And I think also if we, to come to a more sort of philosophical point of view, I have thought a lot about it in the last weeks. Does it help if we push EKRE totally like in their own corner and paint them into this huge, who we are all like really afraid of? Doesn't this give them even more support when they are this totally anti-establishment? And then you can ask, if you do form a coalition where you would need their support also, and if you put down your program where from their program, I have looked at it, there are one or two things that could be agreed on from our side. Obviously, there are things that we definitely wouldn't agree on, starting from the issues you mentioned on discriminating, on human rights. We have you talked about the LGBT issue, it's there all the time. These are things that definitely are not okay for the Reform Party. We do not think that these things should be somehow even in the public debate. But I think for the first thing, before the voters have said their say, forming coalitions is actually maybe not a very good idea. And for the second point, the thing that the Social Democrats are doing, like creating this duality between EKRE and Social Democrats, like pushing up this fight of the extremes. I'm afraid what we have seen, this is a personal view of mine, what we have seen in the UK, what we have seen in the United States, we might be facing something similar to this. And when we come to the state elections in 1.5 years, they might have a lot more support because of this.
Urmas, do you want to comment regarding the coalitions with EKRE?
Well, surely such kind of racial comments are a shameful thing, and I would strongly advise you not to vote for EKRE. But what I wanted to say is not, we are not speaking now who is like proponent or advocate of EKRE or not. I think in this room you will not find it. But the case is now, is there enough willpower to establish a change in Tallinn? We are not speaking about something building Tallinn as a racist town or something like that. It's not an issue. Issue is actually that if we're looking to the current municipal government, I would say I will find there a case of political, ethnical segregation and playing with those feelings. And this is a very dangerous issue. This is a toxic issue. And I would say if we are speaking about the peaceful, harmonious coexistence of different national communities here in Tallinn, so I think the core is that we will cut off that power of chain what current city government produces. And this is actually a very strong mission we are facing, and so therefore I call for united opposition.
So to summarize your point, the ends justify the means. To get rid of Keskerakond, it's worth to go in coalition with EKRE.
No, I didn't say that. I'm not a Jesuit.
But I'm just
but what I wanted to say very clearly is that the current city government is not okay for me. And my main issue is actually a change to take place.
I find it a little bit disturbing that, for example, the Reform Party, they're talking about innovation and Helsinki-Tallinn tunnel, and then, you form a coalition with EKRE.
We haven't formed any coalitions. The coalitions will be formed after the elections.
Yes, but you said that you would be willing to form it.
We form coalitions on the basis of ideas that will be looked at one by one.
Well, this was a news some weeks ago, and everybody was sort of shocked about it, because I think that EKRE should be pushed in the corner as like a bad boy and ousted from the politics, because if we want to talk about Tallinn as an international metro,
they have support in the parliament. You can't forget about these people.
But if we want to talk about Tallinn as an international metropolis who's friendly to all nations and international talent, and then you have in coalition a party who's racist and who's against even Rail Baltic, for example. How does that support business? How can that support Helsinki-Tallinn tunnel? My little brains can't quite get it.
Greens are also against Rail Baltic.
Is sort of
course, Greens are future-looking, not looking for transport solutions. I'm against Rail Baltic, exactly, because this is a 20th century project. We're talking about the project that is going to be completed in 2027, where the trains are going at 160 kilometers per hour. We have a functioning railroad already. Fix this, you're going to save a lot of money, you can still go to Europe. There is not a single good argument for Rail Baltic. Guys, really, there's none. And can I just come to the
Helsinki-Tallinn tunnel won't happen without Rail Baltic.
Absolutely, I agree on this, yes.
Let's get back to the...
And I just wanted to say
and
that,
international talent won't come here when you have racists all over the place.
Let Kaspar...
Yeah, I just want to tell you one thing. Look, all our politicians here, look at me. Do I look like a politician? I have absolutely
You
no
do.
interest of
You
being a
sound like
typical
one,
politician.
definitely.
And that's what I'm gonna say. I think the city run by Centre Party is pretty horrible. But EKRE is a catastrophe. So Green Party will never make a coalition with EKRE.
Well, the Centre Party will never make a coalition with
Okay, thank you.
And they're not going. They're not going
We
to
will
make.
not make with Centrist Party.
Yeah,
Well, you won't
they
make a
will
coalition
not
with
make a
EKRE, but you
coalition.
might make a coalition with Tallinn and Savisaar.
Sorry.
You won't make a coalition with EKRE, but you might make a coalition with Tallinn and
Well,
Savisaar.
we're more likely to make a coalition with Savisaar than with EKRE.
Okay, I
But
rest my
we would
case.
never make a coalition with EKRE.
All right. So on that point,
And
we're gonna.
nor would we if we had the opportunity either. I just
You
for the
wouldn't
record,
go on a coalition with EKRE either. So on that point, we're gonna close this part of the debate. We're gonna have a short break. We'll be back here at 8:40. So people be back here at 8:40. Grab some drinks from the bar if you want.
Just apart from drinks, our Astonishing Evenings team has also prepared few snacks if you want to buy some snacks. Anyway, thank you and warm applause
Yes,
to our
a very
panelists.
warm applause to the panels.
Leene, ma annan sulle kohe 1 minut, jah. Kumb oli kumb?
No minul oli siin peal.
Ei, mõlemad on.
Siin läks su arvutit, ei ole vaja.
Enam ei ole, jah, sorry. I haven't had a chance to look at it. So we'll get from Dara and from my Estonian one later. Yeah. Pity about the base number. Yes. I know. But this is not my fault. Yeah. Okay. Kuule, mingi tund, umbes tund veel. Kuni 10. Kuidas teil muidu on? Võtke sealt tühjaks, jah? Ja me võime ütelda. Aga mulle tundus väga head. Okay, Lance, all good?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
I'm a smoker. I have to get going now.
Yeah, cool. I think we can go. If you open an Estonishing English page, Estonian World Articles, there you can see. If you open it, we didn't publish it on the It is. Oh, let's do that. Okay. So good evening again. Please, if you can take your seats, we're gonna carry on with the second part of our debate tonight, Future of Tallinn. Thanks again for everyone for coming, and you can tell your friends who didn't come today that they can still watch it online. It's live streamed on ERR News, which is Estonian Public Broadcasting's English language site, and Estonian World, and also on Estonishing Evening's Facebook page. So tonight we have here Kaspar, Kurve, Yoko, Alender, Urmas, Reinsalu, Kadri, Kõusaar, and Lance Boxall. And Joe, all yours.
Thank you. So welcome back, everyone, to the second part of the debate. Again, I'll have a few questions for you. We're going to have a hopefully lively discussion, and then some Q&A from the audience, because the point of this is, you know, there's a lot of people who haven't made up their minds. The election is already going on. People can pick their candidates and their political party. I wanted to continue a little bit on what we were talking before, which was the subject of coalitions. And I wanted to address this to you, Kaspar, because there's not a lot of chance that you're going to get a massive result on these elections. So are you considering already some post-election scenarios where some of the measures that you want to push through, how do you plan to push them through while either being in opposition or considering some coalition with some of the other parties?
Well, firstly, unfortunately, I don't want to, but unfortunately, I have to agree with you that our support, unfortunately, is not that big at the moment. This comes down to many factors. Estonian Green Party was a big mess in 2011. People still remember it. Unlike all the other parties in here, apart from Lance, they all have state funding, so they're running their campaigns for hundreds of thousands of euros, whereas our budget is zero. But in here, I would also like to tell you, check the Estonian Greens Facebook page, because what we're making music videos, we're making different videos, we're making completely different program. Now, when it comes to either getting elected or not, and we're going to be in the opposition, I mean, we still have our values. Our aim in the end, and it shouldn't be a politician's aim, isn't to get on power necessarily. It's about the fact that the right things are being done. Obviously, my colleagues in here, I mean, they are not talking about all of the things that are important for the Green Party, like I pointed out, the basic income pilot, etc. But I'm really, really happy to see that all of us are, to a certain extent, with a green mindset. So our job in there would be, if we would be in the opposition, would be to remind them what their promises were, what they were talking about before, and that the really green things, what we've talked about, the renewable energy, the bicycle paths, etc., will really be done.
What are your realistic expectations for these elections?
For these elections, 5%. For 2019 parliament elections, 30.
Wow, okay.
We are very ambitious.
That's ambitious, okay. Abdul, I have a quick question for you. In the last elections in 2013, you ran under the Social Democrats, and actually you got elected to the city council. So first, how was that experience, being an expat and being the first person, I guess like expat, to be elected into the city council? How was that experience? And second, why the change from the Social Democrats into Keskerakond?
All right. I'll answer that with the general and with the specific. Right, general. It's interesting that you asked me this question, but not Yoko Alender, who switched from his party to the Reform Party. It's also interesting that before the last election, and Urmas will confirm this, his party asked me to stand as their candidate.
And if I may say so, your values, you know, from the UK, from your political background, would tend more towards ERL than Keskerakond?
No, I would say I'm a social liberal, so they would tend towards Keskerakond. And if you read my writing, even back in 2009, I said Keskerakond is my natural home.
But you're against LGBT
No, I'm
issues.
not. You know, I'm not. No, I'm not. You know? I mean, actually, I've said the opposite. You know, and I've written this, right?
Keskerakond is.
Some are, and some are not.
Should have been the Green Party.
Yes,
tell me first of all, how was the experience of being a foreigner in the city council?
It was an educational experience. I have enjoyed it. It's very interesting that the Social Democrats vote along with Keskerakond most of the time. Anyway, that became very clear once I was actually sitting there in Valimisliit. And this happened for 4 years. So there isn't that much ideological difference.
So what you're saying is, if you're going to go with what they're voting anyway, you might as well be in the party that's winning the elections.
No, I'm not.
They have already formed the coalition, you know.
No. The reason why, and this comes to the Pacific, was because the Social Democrats stayed in the coalition with the Reform Party, which was going nowhere. And within a few months, they left that coalition and formed a coalition with the Centre Party, a coalition which Urmas' party is also a part of. Right? So actually, I was one step ahead of the decision that they made. Right? Yeah, it was very clear. That,
very forward thinking.
Yeah, well, I like to think of myself as forward.
So according to this logic, you're going to join the Green Party tomorrow?
No. No. The coalition with the Reform Party was a disaster, right? And I was in this meeting where they made this decision, and it was obvious they hadn't made this decision on a matter of principle, right? Okay. And I didn't have ideological agreement with the Social Democrats anyway, and so if they can't even follow their own principles, why stay in that party? Right?
All right. If I ask for your expectations, you expect to be elected?
I'm confident that I'll be elected, but last time I had no idea if I was going to be elected or not. I need the votes of these good people. I will never tell anyone that you're wasting your vote voting for another person, because it's your vote, it's yours to choose. I will never say you're wasting your vote.
All right.
But you have to think, who is most likely to represent my interest? Who are they? Who?
Fair enough. That's what they need to do. Lance, in the last European elections, you were running as well.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how was that experience of running for the European Parliament? And what are, coming from a small new party, what are your expectations for these elections?
My experience of running for the European Parliament was was no different to what I expected, which is that as an independent candidate, you have almost no hope unless your name is Indrek Tarand, and he has specific reasons why he succeeds in that. So it was the experience of doing it. It was the fact that I could do it, and the fact that I regard myself as European first, and it was a great privilege to be able to do that in this country. And
as far as expectations for the...
My expectation for that one was pretty much 0, which is what I got. But in terms of this one, I actually think that, I'm not going to put numbers on it, but I think every single vote for us, it's more powerful in terms of the effect that it has on the overall process than it would be for anyone else. Because a vote is a vote, and a lot of people vote. So your individual vote is unlikely to tip the balance. But every vote that we get is a tally to say, look, Tallinn is changing. That someone from an openly international background, someone that as yet still cannot speak Estonian, can get votes in this election.
Do you think that's going to be an issue? If you get elected to the city council, do you think the fact that you don't speak Estonian is going to be an issue?
I think it will be an issue. It will be an issue we will deal with.
So
we will deal with at that point, yes.
It will be an educational experience. as Abdul put it.
Can I butt in here? Because I agree with Lance on a couple of points. First is, I don't think it will be a problem if he doesn't speak, because you have the agenda beforehand, so you know what's on the agenda. So if you do your homework, right, you can operate there without speaking Estonian particularly well. I do speak it about the level that most Estonians speak English, which is not good enough for a debate in Estonian, but it's good enough to give speeches and Volleyball, which I have done. That's the first point. The second point is you have to make your vote count, right? And that does mean that you have to think, well, which candidate is most likely to represent my interests, and who is most likely, who would they notice if they get a lot of votes? And in terms of the expat community, that does mean me and Lance, right? Because we are the expat candidates, right?
To be fair,
that is
there's a few more expat candidates running. Obviously, we can't have them all here, so there's a few more. It's not just the two of you. There's more candidates that are expats running for some of them.
In our coalition.
Yeah, but in our district, in my district,
actually independent.
I'm the only one.
Urmas, I wanted to ask you something. In the last local elections, ERL actually had a very impressive result, not only in Tallinn, but throughout the country. In the meantime, the party seems to have lost a little bit of the political clout that it had. In fact, maybe it lost some of the more nationalist rhetoric to EKRE and some of the more business-oriented speech to Reform. What are your expectations for this year's elections in Tallinn?
Solid ones. So I think we are going to get a good result, and I'm sure people would like to take a real stuff instead of replica. So what I wanted to say is I won't accuse Abdul of like choosing between different parties. It's and I totally understand like a Stockholm syndrome you're having in that sense. Speaking about the current city government, but the truth is
Tell him what's it be like Stockholm.
The problem is actually, if I'm looking to the huge, mammoth-type lists of centrist party candidates, so Eesti Päevaleht made an analysis that basically 40% of those candidates are actually city officials. And I'm truly a pity of them, because they are put in such kind of dilemma that, I think either you lose your job or some chances in your professional activities, or you will run for that team. And I think this is something in a modern society, something abnormal, and we should refuse that.
Kadri, you're also kind of new to the politics game. My question to you is, the Social Democrats seems to have, understandably, some of the more social-oriented programs that would potentially benefit some of the citizens. Yet people don't seem to vote for the Social Democrats. What's the issue there? Is it the message that doesn't get through? Is it the ideology that kind of clouds that people don't vote for it? And what is your expectation regarding these elections for your results?
Well, of course, I hope for the bright future, but yes, in a way, the whole game, if we could use that word, perhaps has been routed into one corner, that there is this sort of conflict between EKRE and us. But why I agreed to run in the local elections was that just this party, for me as a very cosmopolitan-minded person and an artist, seemed just to represent my interests the best way, because there's no other party addressing really, let's say, people who are not maybe the richest, or who don't want to be entrepreneurs.
Kadri, come on.
Well,
give me a break,
let me finish. I mean, just that's why. And also the most amount of like my own former colleagues from journalism, Eesti Express, writers. There's the most amount of writers running with Social Democrats for obvious reasons. I mean, most intellectuals tend to lean a little bit to the left, and I started to do that. I was very sort of, I don't want to say, I leaned to the right when I was like 18, 20, like, oh, wow, but then, I became a mother, and I saw some like other levels of life that I was not familiar with before, and this sort of humbled me.
Is it fair to say that the Social Democrats are the only more left-leaning of the major parties
yes,
competing in this
which
election?
is not. I think that which gives voice to the weaker ones, and also which is not corrupt, because this is the only party that I like ethically can really. Okay, the Greens maybe now as well, but everybody else has some kind of skeletons in the cupboard.
And Lance's party as well.
Yeah, yes. I mean, like the small ones.
Kadri, don't be so sure about saying that.
Well, I mean, there was the card from Patria. There was a candidate selling, like some years ago, selling those identity cards, or what was it, big scandal that 30 people registered in the Old Town flat.
Social Democrats have also had issues in Tartu. There is this vice mayor who has been had a corruption scandal and
I'm
been
not
taken
familiar.
down. So I wouldn't say it's.
May I just add that also the Reform Party and the Centre Party has had these issues.
Yes, if you play the game.
And the Social Democrats is run by the son of the richest man in the country, who's obsessed with taxing people. Well,
If you play the game long enough.
Had their path in last parliament, I remember.
Right, but actually, Kadri raises a good point, which is what I wanted to.
Yeah, just I'm not even a party member. I'm because Estonian local elections allow you to run in sort of the list of, or you run together with that party. But why I agreed to run was precisely because those principles are just very appealing to me. That it is also the sort of most pro-Western and
Kadri raises a good point, which is the point about culture. And the Social Democrats has a few points on their agenda about culture. One of the issues in Tallinn when it comes to culture is how did you put it, the propaganda machine? The Tallinna TV and everything else. What are the different parties' plans? I think some of you mentioned specifically in your program, I think, Kaspar, you have different ideas of what to do with Tallinn TV besides closing it.
We have different ideas pretty much about everything.
The other parties kind of were talking about closing it. So, Yoko, maybe you can start. What are your...
I think actually we have if we talk about taxpayers' money for media, we have the public broadcasting system. I think they're doing a very good job, and I think the rest can actually be left to private sector. In that sense, also I agree with IRL, and also because Abdul mentioned my leaving, I entered politics in the last elections with the...
I'm sure you had your good reasons.
Yeah, I will just tell these reasons if you allow me. Together with the then mayor candidate Erik Niiles Kross, and also as Kadri not being a member of the party but running with it, speaking for issues of the living environment. And I left IRL because I must say that actually it is not EKRE who has kept laws for the cohabitation law, the LGBT issues. the hate speech issues, it's not EKRE who has. They have no power. They have 7 members in the parliament. They have no power. They are old men having their fun in this back corner, but IRL is the one who has actually hindered these cohabitation laws being actually put in power, and this was at some point for me the breaking point.
Which is not an issue for the local elections, it's
Yes,
a national
exactly.
issue. Okay,
If we are talking about coalitions, the Social Democrats say for them that's the reason why they don't want to go into coalition, but they are in coalition with the ones who are actually hindering these questions. Double morale for me.
But let's focus on Tallinn TV.
We would close it, obviously, like the other Mupo, Lippo, all these kind of things where the taxpayers' money is put into some kind. Also, the waste system that now has come up. Like, why does the city has to do this? It's not. But we have very good businesses who can do this.
Urmas, I assume ERL would also close down Tallinn TV.
Let it put to such perspective. A colleague from Greens said that other parties have hundreds of thousands of euros for election campaign, which is true. And in that sense, it's a challenge for you. But a case is actually, if we sum last 4 years propaganda machine money, not only Tallinn TV, but also the print media, etc., it is about 40 million euros. So this is actually a Goliath. And now we are all basically, altogether, Davids with hundreds of thousands of euros, facing 40 million euros. So I think not Tallinn TV, but all this media concern. They are also giving actually Tallinn money to the Russian TV channel, which is PBK, which also is ought to make propaganda. And also we see also their...
Okay, so, I mean, I understand. Reform ERL, clearly you think the same. Yeah. You want to close down the Tallinn TV. Social Democrats?
As well, yeah.
Closing down. Yeah. Keskerakond, obviously...
No, we want to keep it. And I'll tell you why. I mean, this is the only... I honestly say, and I'm not joking, it is the least biased.
The real news.
You're joking.
No,
you just said you're not joking, you're joking.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not joking. It is the least biased media channel in Tallinn.
Wow.
And it fits in with the European idea that issues should be decided at a local level, subsidiary, right? And that includes information, right?
So
this is an information vehicle that could be used to give information to the expat community. No other channel can do that. For the private industry, they're not going to do it because it's not profitable.
Well,
ERL are not going to do it because it's against the national will of Estonians.
Well, the Estonian national broadcaster has a section in English.
Yeah,
Postimees has a section in English with bad grammar, but it's a section in English. And Estonian World has publications in English as well.
Which is very small and doesn't tell you what's happening.
So,
in the
okay, so you're saying that the factual level of news that comes out of Tallinn TV is at the BBC level.
I would say it is as good as any other broadcaster in Estonia. And the proof of this is that members of Yoko's party, she doesn't even know that.
Have been there.
And members of Urmas's party have been there.
They probably
and I know
have followed
supporters
them on
of the
the street or
SDE
something.
have been there.
Okay, so
and ECRA have been there. Right? Even they have a right to have their voice heard.
So I want to quickly hear what Lance thinks of it, and then I want to hear the different plans that the Green Party has.
Yeah, all I was going to add, I understand that there's a lot of debate about Tallinn TV and all the other media, and I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why it hasn't been doing a BBC standard of job, although the BBC has been heavily criticised for causing Brexit. And if you look at private operations of media in the UK, they are also largely responsible. So don't just trust private industry. Media is more important than that. So I'm not saying I'm supporting either-sidedness, but I'm saying it's much more complicated. And handing things over to say, oh, the private sector can deal with this, you have to have a lot of controls on the objectivity of whoever is running it, whether it's in the state hands or city hands or private hands. You need some independent objectivity.
Which potentially is a good opening for Kaspar's plans and the Green Party's plans for Tallinn TV.
This was the perfect opening. No, but honestly, it's... I think it's a bit funny to talk in here with the expat community about Tallinn TV. How many of you have ever watched Tallinn TV? Not a lot. Not a lot, and exactly. And therefore you hear opinions from one side to another. Look, guys, it's simple. Tallinn TV currently is a mess. It's a big, big mess. I can't agree with you at all that it's not biased. It's very, very biased. Even if you looked at the election debates now with the mayor candidates, with candidates from the local municipalities, the way it was being moderated, it was very center party leaning. There is no doubt about that. However, me, unlike the others, I do see potential in Tallinn TV. Tallinn TV, what it lacks at the moment is focus, because it's all over the place. So firstly, what Tallinn TV really has to find is focus. And what I really do like about Tallinn TV is that there are a lot of political shows. I mean, I wake up, politics is my passion. I have a lot to develop still, obviously. But I wake up in the morning and I think of politics. I go to sleep next to my girlfriend in the evening and I think of politics. You know, and there are a lot of potentially good shows. And I think Tallinn TV, the focus in there should really be on political debates, things like that, to make politics interesting for people again. Because let's face it, politics is incredibly, incredibly boring, also for the majority of Estonians. And that is a big problem as well, why a lot of people perhaps are not making a rational decision when they're going to vote for the center party, etc. So what we're trying to do, I understand my time's up. So we want to change the way it's being run. It shouldn't be center party oriented. We want to bring young people, doing programs for young people. We want to have political shows, and we do, I completely agree, it has to have news and other shows also in English, so that you guys can be, what's the word? I forgot my English.
Brainwashed.
Nice one, nice one.
No, the word he's looking for is informed. I mean,
informed, exactly.
Informed,
thank you. But the brainwash was funny.
All right, let's leave this Tallinn.
But
TV.
let me say something, because Tallinn TV is something that
I think we understand the point that Keskerakond wants to keep Tallinn
and,
TV open.
and the Green Party wants to keep Tallinn TV.
Yeah, fair enough.
With reforms.
And maybe
with reforms, yeah, that's fair enough.
And maybe in 4 years, when we have new elections and we have another debate like this, we can do it in Tallinn TV.
That would be great.
That would be great. That would be great.
Okay. I have in front of me a copy of Tallinn's budget for 2017. And one of the biggest items on this budget is education. So I want to bring the focus a little bit to education. I have 2 daughters. One of them goes to the kindergarten. The next one is going to go to kindergarten very soon. The oldest one will soon go to school. A lot of expats also have families and kids. So the topic of education and families is something that's also very important to attracting the international talent, not just for 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, but if we actually want them to settle here. So I want to ask from you, what are some of the measures that you have when it comes to kindergartens, to the education, the level of education, and specifically the number of spots for kids in kindergartens, so the ratio of teachers to students. So I don't know, maybe Kadri, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think that the spots also, I mean, I'm thinking that every child should have possibility to go to the kindergarten, because there was an issue some years ago which has been now solved more or less.
It hasn't been solved.
It's better than it was.
When a child is born, you need to register her
Not in the
to the
district
kindergarten.
Well, but it is, we have to say that it is considerably better than, say, 5 years ago. And maybe there are less children also. So
No, there are more children.
Well, okay. But our party has even laid out in the program that we should also focus on the quality and, as I mentioned before, the renovation of kindergartens and, of course, free, healthy food for all the children, both in kindergartens and in schools. But I think this is also in all the party programs that Estonian language lessons should be started early, and I think that we should not have a shock method that a foreign language child instantly is showered with Estonian, but there should be step-by-step lessons, and obviously it's easier to learn the language when you start that early. I'm not myself in favor of the shock method, so to say. So it should be gradual because it's much more child-friendly.
Okay, Yoko?
Well, actually, I think I have 4 kids from the age of 15 to 5. I think in a way you're right that it has become a little bit better, but you can still, actually the parent today cannot choose where, if he or she wants to have because the whole of Tallinn is one region. Basically, if you live here in Kalamaja, you can get a spot in Lasnamäe. It's probably not very convenient and not very good for transport reasons either. But the main change we want to make is we want to have one kindergarten system. We don't want to choose kids on the basis of their mother tongue. The Estonian kindergarten and school system should be prepared for all kinds of mother tongues, which means that we have one system. If you look at Finland, if you look at Sweden, you look at UK, it's all one system. If you have enough kids with another mother tongue, you will have extra lessons in this. But if it's actually not a problem for a child to come to another language environment, and it doesn't mean that it cannot speak its mother tongue at home, it should continue this. It's the best way to do it. But at kindergarten, it should be one system, and it's also, as I said before, this is a main, very important thing to do, to join the communities of the Russian-speaking and the Estonian-speaking today. This is where the paths actually today go very much. Like, it's not only about language, it's about social networking, all these things, and also expats. I mean, you are probably here, most of you from Europe or from the Western world. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. But also we have actually a lot of new immigrants, expats from the rest of the former Soviet states. And where do they go when they choose their living spots, when they choose their kindergartens? They at the moment choose the Russian-speaking one. And actually this is how we create poverty and how we create ghettos more and more. So that's why we believe that we need to keep one system, and we need to prepare all the kindergartens and all the schools for kids with other mother tongues.
Lance, what are your thoughts on this?
On the face of it, at least what Yoko was saying seemed to make a lot of sense to me. It's not something that we go into in enormous detail, but certainly making sure that spaces are available where people are living. And it comes back to, it's the same thing as the transport. You get this feeling that things have not changed, except in the private sector. So people have bought houses, renovated houses, moved, had families, all the rest, and the system is like, oh, well, where did you live in 1990? That's where we have a kindergarten, or that's where we have a tram line, or whatever else. So in that basis, things need to be kept up to date, and they planned, and people, you know, roughly speaking, if you take out the incomers that we want more of, that how many children are already been born and when they're going to go to kindergarten, etc. I think the other thing that I would make a point of, it as just a general thing, is make more effort to get more international teachers into these schools at all ages. Have some special. I mean, I still like to see Tallinn as a real international city, and to do that, you want to attract people, even if they only come here for 1 year or 2 years, or even as just part of their training, but make a real reach-out effort to say, come here, experience, you know, the digital revolution in the classroom, whatever else. There's some selling points for teachers to come here, even if it's only on a short-term thing, but just make the whole system more international.
More international. Kaspar?
Okay. Well, we also obviously support the same things, that the kindergarten should be as close to home as possible. What we also support is that the children will be multilingual already from the kindergarten. So it shouldn't only be in Estonian, it shouldn't only be in Russian. These two languages should be already combined. And in addition to that, some other language, English, for example. I think in terms of kindergarten, why our views are different, what we want to implement also are vegetable gardens, both to schools and kindergartens, so that kids actually are in touch with the nature, that they see how things grow, that they grow something with their own hands, and it gives you really, really a different perspective. I mean, I'm going home now, I'm going to make a sandwich with a fresh coriander from my windowsill. It's going to be amazing, and it's great, and these are the things we also have to implement. And I don't want to go much into detail, but in terms of the education system, in terms of schools, etc., I think we have a lot to learn from Finland, from Finnish Greens, and how the Finnish education system works now, based on phenomenon-based learning, etc.
Kaspar, just to challenge you a little bit on this, the food that is served in the kindergartens and the gardens. How do you plan to finance this? So would the budget for education within the city budget increase?
No, within the what we want to do is we want to get tax cuts to the organic farmers. We want that the food is being grown locally in Tallinn farms, in Tallinn suburb farms, etc. It has to be organic. It has to be pesticide free. This is the best kind of a food, and we have all the possibility, the technology to do that. So there's really no excuse of not doing that.
Do you know the amount of money that goes into one kindergarten lunch?
1.78 cents, 1.12 euros, I can't remember exactly.
Yes.
Which one was it?
Just to make it sure. It's around €1, yes. Yes.
All
Just
right.
so you know. I'm not saying anything. I'm absolutely for organic
I think
food.
I pretty adequately answered to your question there about the
Abdul,
cost.
your views on the kindergarten and the education issue?
My child is 4 years old, so he goes to kindergarten now. So this is a subject which is very close to my heart, right? In fact, the reason why I stood at the candidate last time was to improve kindergartens. And one of the things I've campaigned for, and I actually managed to achieve, is to get play areas for kindergarten.
Play areas.
Play areas, right. And that's one of the things on our manifesto, is to build 100 play areas and to restore those existing play areas. And to provide hobby schools, so every child should have a hobby school. We've also successfully provided a decent wage for the kindergarten teachers. It's 1,050 euros a month, right? Which is something that was supported by all the parties, but we managed to achieve in coalition with the teachers' union. And this is something that we are moving towards and are working towards, right? Certainly, it's above the rate of inflation. It was 4.3% in the last year, and in January it will be another 5% above the rate of inflation, right? And so, I agree with Kaspar that we do have to have multilingual schools. What Yoko, she didn't put it this way, but what she is actually advocating for is to crush Russian language schools.
Actually, Russians prefer to put their kids in the single system.
But what Kaspar is talking about, and what I'm talking about, is having multilingual schools where people can speak English or speak Russian or speak Estonian or speak whatever language that they're comfortable with, and having teachers from the international community. So I'm more in agreement with Kaspar than I am with Yoko, because essentially that's what she's talking about.
Well, I think that Estonia is also in a transitional phase in a way, because there isn't, for example, enough qualified teachers to teach the subjects in the Estonian language. And until we are not ready for that, it's impossible to unify the system.
It's not true. There are you know that since a few years back, no Russian-speaking kindergarten teachers are being taught, because the trend shows that every Russian parent who has, or not every, of course, I'm lying here, but the majority of higher educated, better off Russian-speaking families, they choose to put their kids in Estonian kindergartens because it gives them better opportunities. And also, but who needs to care for the ones who actually are then not so well off? This is why we are in favor of one single system, and this doesn't mean they don't get their mother tongue. You are not understanding me correctly in this sense. There will be an extra teacher who will give the extra lesson.
Yeah, I'm saying
I know this can happen from experience.
Eventually,
I do not speak my parents' mother tongue because I went to an English language kindergarten.
Eventually, Estonia, of course, will have to have the unified system, but I think that it isn't so easy to make the shift that quickly.
We should start. We have waited 26 years, and we are creating poverty here.
Let's see what
you were in the government for 16 years, and what did you guys do?
It's not a government issue. It's a local level issue.
We're supposed to be in top 5 richest countries by now.
Let's see what ERL has to say about the educational issue.
Well, the practical problem looking to the kindergarten seats is actually mainly to the kids under 3 years. from 1.5 years up to the 3. And I think formally on paper, the city government declares that there is no deficit of the kindergarten seats. But this is actually all over the city territory. So it means it could appear so that if you're living in Nõmme, you are given a kindergarten seat in Lasnamäe or in Põhja-Tallinn, which makes actually literally 10 or 15 kilometers, which makes over 45 minutes to drive each morning, and then drive to your working place. So I think the very important is actually that the kindergarten places, the first thing is in your district area, and the second is actually that the same family kids should have the same kindergarten, the seats. And the third thing is speaking about the education.
You don't need a third thing. I think two things are
okay,
fine.
sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, what's very important is that this comes back to the quality of life that we were talking about. The fact that if I were living in Lisbon, I would have to drive very long to drop my kids in the kindergarten, and here the kindergarten is very close to where I work or where I live. We neglect these facts as being very important also for attracting foreign talent here. I want to move the discussion away from the kindergarten education, just because we're running out of time and we want to get questions from the audience. I'll have one last question and then we move to the Q&A of the audience. And my question has to do with the second biggest item on the city budget has to do with roads and streets. And maybe it's a pet peeve of mine, maybe some districts are better than others, but the quality of the infrastructure and the roads leaves a lot to be desired. So maybe we can do this with a show of hands, or you can just quickly answer yes or no. Will you put focus on improving the city infrastructure when it comes to roads, obviously bike lanes, but making sure that the city is also accessible? A lot of you said that. Actually, this is a non-point. Is there anyone who doesn't agree with this?
I agree with that, but to a certain extent, I definitely don't agree with, like we talked also, the reidi there before.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is absolutely out of the question.
So then let's focus the attention to this, which is the seafront, which is the access to the sea. What are your visions or plans to make that seafront more open to people, if any, in your programs?
We are thinking that actually, if the city has been saying forever that we want to open up to the sea, and now we want to build a road that belongs somewhere in the countryside for quick driving and for lorries, this is not the way to go forward. I think an access into the area on the seaside is definitely needed, but it needs to be a city street, so we want to redesign it. It's possible, the freights are going to go out, it's already been said, and this is all still possible at the moment. So the second point, I think it's very important that in the future we build or we plan infrastructure together with the actual developments. That if we, at the moment, it's not done like this. It's done like, first we just do a road and we ignore everything else that's around it. And I think one third point I want to stress is the shopping malls. That's one place where I would, if I have a chance, because we have this agreement that if we do form a coalition, I would be responsible, or we would try to get me into the position of being responsible for planning. We have too many of these. These actually make the lifestyle car-orientated, and we don't need many more of these.
I thought you weren't talking about coalitions until after the elections, but it's good that you bring that discussion.
If we get into it, then that's a possibility.
Lance, what are your views regarding the seafront and the infrastructure?
I mean, regarding the seafront, we don't think there should be roads there at all unless they absolutely have to be. And more important than that, even when you're walking to the seafront, and when you're walking just to Kalasadama, you have to cross. I mean, from where we live, you actually have to cross like 4 different pedestrian crossings for absolutely no reason other than that the traffic layout has been like half changed, and you have weird little crossings, and it's probably 2 minutes walk turns into 15, and 15 in the cold weather or when it's raining, which maybe you wouldn't go to the beach at that point, but I mean, it's ridiculous having to spend so much time crossing roads. So that's the first thing I'd say. The Reidi seems to be absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I've been telling people campaigning, I don't care if the traffic has to go via Riga to get from one port to another, but it doesn't go through the middle of Tallinn. That's absolutely crazy. So Riga may be an exaggeration, but there must be somewhere better to put a road that carries trucks.
Kadri?
And just on the road thing that I didn't finish earlier on the kindergartens is, and just pick up something else that people said, is I don't think parents should be allowed to drive their children to school. I mean, this should be part of the planning settlement. It's like you make sure that the schools are within walking or public transport distance, and the children should either go in groups, if that's important, but the driving of people to school in a safe city and a safe country like Estonia is crazy, and it's terrifyingly bad for traffic, and it should not be allowed, or should be strongly discouraged, whichever way.
I agree, because so far lots of city planning has been very car-oriented, and I think that there is this ideological shift which we more or less tend to agree here even, that it should be more pedestrian-friendly, more cycling-friendly. So, I mean, I have nothing to add in that sense, but I think that what happened with Rainy Day is scandalous.
Urmas?
Well, Rainer Vakra has agreed to it, your mayor candidate. He thinks it's a brilliant plan.
No,
he does. In the commission, in Riigikogu, he, together with the center party, he said, go for it, build it. I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
I don't know, in the program we are against it, so.
Well, it's very interesting.
Urmas?
I would like to defend the car drivers. There's going on some kind of hate policy towards car drivers in Tallinn. And let me explain. If TomTom is measuring actually the time the people are spending in traffic jams, and we are spending, after the years and years of such kind of hate politics in Tallinn towards car drivers, more time in traffic jams than in Madrid and in Berlin.
It's
and
because
this is reality.
I find that very hard to believe.
No.
Get a bike,
Vice versa. The theory is that we will smash out the cars from the town and make the life as hell, as long queues and so on, long jams. Those are intentionally arranged, my dear.
And
so
less cars is the answer. Less cars.
no.
silly.
We're a so small town.
I find it interesting that 10 years ago when I came here, the notion of having a European car-free day, nobody was doing anything. This year, we got a portion of a road cut, and there was some, activities there. We're a long way to go to make Tallinn a pedestrian-friendly city.
And this won't happen maybe until there's free parking, because there are new theories that until you have free parking, then actually all the taxpayers are paying for it, because real estate agents add it to the cost of the flats, and also you are all, actually when I don't own a car and I don't own a car, I'm paying for your car, because always those spots
Okay,
that
I
cost
want to let Urmas finish and then
clog up
quickly.
everything.
So all others are promising hell to the car drivers.
No.
And
No.
we are saying, let's be rational. Let's keep things in real life. Don't build utopia.
Okay, quickly.
I want to talk about not just the pedestrians, but the pedestrians who struggle. Right? And so it's not just a question of building roads. It's a question of the roads that improving the existing roads that we have, making them flatter so that you could get from the street onto the pavement, and having those low buses so that you can get onto the bus if you are in a wheelchair or if you are an older person using a cane. These are the things that are on the very top of Keskerakon's proposal.
I have to admit, I'd never realized how bad it was until I had children.
Absolutely.
And I had to walk around with a stroller.
Exactly.
Why hasn't it
And that was the
happened?
first time I realized.
Why hasn't it happened?
Exactly.
If it's a priority.
Well, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I'm going to. But it was one of the things that I campaigned for when I joined the city council was I realized, a disabled person cannot use this building, right? Because there was no, it's an old building with a winding staircase. The hall is on the 3rd floor, right? And you have to go up this winding staircase.
Oh,
right?
let's be truthful. That was made when Savisaar got into a wheelchair, not earlier. Sorry about that.
Whoa.
What the hell?
But I was campaigning for it before he got it.
Okay,
Before.
what about the sea? What about the sea and this roads?
Just try to be as quick as possible now. We have to move to a question.
To some extent, I'll be honest here. I'm campaigning in the Kesslin. So my concerns are the development of Kesslin, right? And those are the issues that I'm concerned. And we are going to build, we're going to improve the high street from Valimisliit to Hobbyarm. We're working on the principle of making it pedestrian friendly, right? And the bicycle roads, which have already been spoken about before, right? And so those are my priorities, and those are the things that I'm.
And let's finish with the.
Just to say, it's not about punishing car owners. Helsinki is looking to make people think they must be mad if they get in a car. They're making public transport work so that people would not even question why they wouldn't get into public transport. It's not about punishing car drivers. It's making cars irrelevant to a city centre.
Exactly.
No, but also if you provide I must say to Urmas.
Is vice versa.
No, it's not. Right?
No, but if I have to say, as I am still an architect, and these things have been studied so much in the world. It's not about
your
banning.
result is more traffic jams than in Berlin, my dear.
I must say, today we have had very car-oriented. We have gone from 25 cars per 1,000 people when we quit Soviet Union to 600 cars per 1,000 people.
Well, naturally you
and
can't
that
compare.
means that we have had all the investments into car infra only. Why do we all sit here and talk about that we need the other options? Because if some people choose the other options, I'm sorry, but then also the cars can go. Today we are looking into only more traffic. If we build the radial roads, if we keep it car-oriented, we will all be only sitting ourselves to death in the traffic jams. So I'm sorry, Urmas, but about these issues you are not very professional.
So last point from Kaspar.
I just wanted to say that this makes me really happy. We're all really green here, except for Urmas. I mean, what the hell was that? But no, I understand we have limited time. Abdul, we have limited time, so let me finish. Pedestrians first, cyclists, public transport second, cars the third. The problem is that our public transport system, which we didn't really touch, is out of date. The new tram lines have to be done. Tallinn does not have to be a car-oriented town. This is not the way the world is moving towards the future. It's not.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's finish with a show of hands.
Tallinn is not car-oriented.
Let's finish with a show of hands.
As has been for years.
Who wants to keep the free public transportation in Tallinn? Show of hands.
And extend it to visitors as well.
Yeah.
All right, so we have two parties that are not sure. Well, one is clearly against, and
personally I am against it, but it's a very difficult political issue.
All right, good. So that ends this part of the debate. Now we go to the Q&A if there's questions from the audience.
Just again, one microphone at the back, one here. So who wants to ask? Yep.
There's one question there.
I'm really surprised at IRL that they have such a post-Soviet mentality, because it's only in Russia where actually the car is the king. And I feel ashamed that IRL is actually having that position.
But not everyone in IRL, fortunately.
That's not a question.
That was a statement more than a question.
This is a statement which deserves answer also. Small answer. My point was not that we are against pedestrians or we are against the public transport. Vice versa. We have to use more modern views how to establish a public transport lines. Now, this is quite absurd situation that actually, if we are looking towards from Lasnamäe to Õismäe area and such areas, so suburbias are not linked to each other by public transport, and this is a problem. But when I what I mentioned is actually that case is now with the cars, is that intentional vision of city government is actually to raise a burden of traffic jams, not liquidating them. And the concept of that is that then we are having less car traffic. Has it happened, I will ask you? No, just a stress of traffic has arisen. Look, other cities, where are in Tallinn actually wise traffic lights? Where are the cases where we actually try to avoid traffic jams? The case is vice versa, and this is actually a political attitude the city government has taken, and this is, to my understanding, silly.
All right.
It has nothing to do with modernism.
Let's move for more
We're
questions.
running out of time, so try to be as specific and quick.
Can I just get a quick show of hands? Who has a car? Okay, so we understand what the audience is.
Questions?
Questions? There's two questions. There's two questions.
Yeah,
there.
gentleman at the back first.
Yeah.
So with Estonia betting heavily on e-residents and entrepreneurs, what can Tallinn do to encourage more entrepreneurs to come here and the existing ones not to, evacuate?
Yes.
Who wants to take that?
Yes.
Yeah, Yoko.
Well, unfortunately, we cannot change back the tax system that's been somehow been done things with as a state issue, but from the Tallinn side, we are talking about privatizing some of the issues, like I said, that the city tries to do at the moment, so definitely there is one point, but there is also about, actually there are a lot of city networks that can open doors to actual enterprises. I think it's also very much about the brand of the city. Today it's not, Tallinn is not like a business city, it's not viewed as such. Also, we have this point of the innovation component in the city procurements, that actually to drive forward innovation, to have new enterprises coming in and taking part in the city procurement. So we want to introduce this innovation component and the quality component in procurement. So that's
Lance?
some ideas.
Well, I mean, it's basically almost the most important part of what we stand for. You need to make it easier for people to move here. You need to make it easy for people to settle here when you get here. You need to make it easy for them to understand the kindergarten system and the booking system and the geography of Tallinn, and the fact that you might have to have a car even though you hate having a car because there is no public transport between Nome and Lasnamäe, which is where your kindergarten was. And you need all of these things, and you need to make it available in English, because English is a much more common language than Estonian. That's just a fact. And the more you do these things, then the more people will come here. And once they are here, and once you have more people here, the city becomes more international, it becomes more prosperous. The roads get better automatically because there is more money to build. I mean, half this thing is a shortage of resources. And that's what you need. You need a successful economy. You need more people coming here. You need the city to compete against other successful international cities. And then everything is done for you. That's how enterprise works.
Abdul?
Well, about Tallinn being the international city, I think it's very interesting that Kadri has taken this point, because this is something that the Social Democrats do, but they pretend to do, but in reality they're not, right? The international community is not only the expats here, it's also people from countries in whose origin is in Central Asia, from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, former Soviet countries. Yeah, and you also have to represent their interests. We have to think about them too. I mean, I went down to the mosque the other day to campaign. No.
Can you elaborate how do Social
protect
Democrats not make sure that international community wouldn't have a comfortable life here? I didn't quite understand that point, excuse me.
Well, because the Social Democrats, like the other parties, right, they are quite a nationalistic party.
We are not. We are the most cosmopolitan.
Their candidate, he's a decent guy. He's well dressed. He drives an expensive car.
I have a feeling you're not addressing the question that was asked, which was, how do you make sure that these people who come here to establish businesses feel welcomed?
Well, I'll come to that in a second. But I also want to talk about the
Social Democrats. You want to talk about
I want to talk about the minorities who come from non-European countries as well. Their interests need to be represented. They operate in Russian, right? And so it is important that we have information, not just in English, but in Russian, not just for the Russian community, but also for the other expats who are not here, who are here from other countries, right? That is something that the Social Democrats do not endorse. It's not in their platform. It is on ours. That's the first point. The second point is, as Lance said...
It's the wrong information, but whatever.
As Lance said, we need to have...
Go to the website and see with your own eyes.
No, I've read your platform. Sorry, I have read it.
Go on.
We need to have information in English, right? We have existing vehicles that exist. I find Kaspar a very reasonable person. He's not, unfortunately, going to get elected. I wish he would.
Abdul, I'm the next Prime Minister of Estonia, not the next one, but soon, so don't worry about me.
So you will leave your position in the city government quite soon?
No, not the next one. I misspoke.
that information can be provided on the existing city vehicles, right? And
Tallinn
TV, and not only Tallinn TV. No one's spoken about Hääled, right? The city newspaper.
Right, so you're saying that Tallinn TV and Hääled are going to be the vehicles of information for the people who you're going to attract from abroad. Even though when we asked who watches Tallinn TV,
well, at the moment, no one watches
hand.
it. No one watches it here because it's in Estonian. They can't understand it, right? But if it's in English, they will watch it. They will.
Right.
And the most important infrastructure development that the Centre Party is working towards is the City Hall, right?
City Hall.
Yeah, the City Hall. And that's only possible because you have a government which is working in synergy with the local government.
Right.
We didn't have that before. And so that's why it's so important. Next year is the Centenary. It's so important to have this synergy between the local government and the
central.
city government.
I'll give Kadri a quick chance to answer.
Well, we didn't quite learn from Abdul's answer, just that because the head of Social Democrats drives a nice car, I didn't quite see the connection with the, Social Democrats allegedly being against international community. But whatever, I'm saying that Tallinn's advantage, like I mentioned actually as in my earlier speech, our advantage is that we are so small, everything could be very compact, and infrastructure and public services should be having good quality and available to everybody because, our family has a very bad experience from London where it's an absolute disaster and the nursery costs more than £1,000. So this is the reason our family is planning our future in Tallinn, that it won't happen like that, and every child would have an opportunity to have a kindergarten close to home. And I think that this is also when we talk about smart solutions or solutions, maybe we could build some kind of app or, which would help to organize those things, because the problem is also that many parents register, or, when you have to pick those free spots, they are not actually taking the ones close to their home, but close to where they work. And so, for example, central Tallinn don't have enough spots, but for example, where I live, there's enough. So it depends on an area as well, but with digital solutions we can, of course, make it better. And I think that Tallinn's, how to attract international talent and international community in general would be that everything would be simple and available to everybody. This is our advantage, what we could do, because we can never compete with London or New York with having as high salaries or it would be so glamorous. We should focus on green lifestyle and public services, and that everything is possible to do online as well.
Right. Reach out right now to the startup community which are international and ask them to solve some of these problems. Not say we'll build an app. The city council doesn't need to build an app. Other people can build an app. Put it back to them.
But we have to collaborate.
Very quickly, Urmas, if you have something to add to this.
Mr. Osinovsky has Audi, I remember. I have Skoda, yes. But
I actually wondered what car you
drive. I have a bike. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, in a national level, in a state level, we just recently passed a program to attract IT people to come to work in Estonia with the Welcome to Estonia program.
So
which
what
is
can
Estonian
Tallinn
use. And my point is actually that to attract brains and to attract skilled labor force, this is actually a job, a duty of the city also. This is not the one thing is Estonian entrepreneurship agency. This is doing it nationwide. But as we said, the regions are competing also internationally for skilled people and brains, and I think this is a duty also for a city. But pointing out the question actually was about the e-residence. The question was about e-residence, and as I remembered, but it turned to be rather confusing. So how to attract e-residents also. And I think this is actually one of the core challenges for us, how to establish in Tallinn such kind of financial services where we will also make some extra added value for the outcome of e-residence businesses. And as I said, Helsinki metropole area has their own business strategy, also orientated in financial services. They have succeeded quite well, and also IT. And I think this is actually when we are going to have our own metropolitan area strategy. Those are also two key areas we should focus.
Okay. Kaspar, I don't know if you want to comment on this
Yeah,
one.
I already said that before, but I think it's, I do agree to a certain extent, it's the city hall's thing to do as well. But Estonian and Tallinn's image has to be really that we are the Silicon Valley of Europe. We want innovation here, and for that we have to be at first innovative ourselves. We really have to use the possibilities that the 21st century offers us, and there are a lot of possibilities. And I'm sorry guys, but checking for solutions from the previous centuries problems, it's just not going to work. We're
You
talking
mean
about
the city hall, like Tallinna Linnahall, putting 100 millions of taxpayers' money into this that the private sector has said it's not feasible?
We're talking about doing the things that are worthy of the 21st century. It's renewable energy.
Okay, you're not talking about City Hall that he says is the main reason to do. The conference center.
Let me interject because Urmas said something that's very interesting. He said it's the job of the city to try and attract talent. But his party wants to close down the Brussels office for the city. They want no representation at all. That's part of their manifesto. Right? So it's pretty ironic that on the one hand he's saying we should do this, but actually the manifesto says the exact opposite. Right? You know, it is the job of the city, and lobby work is something that the city could do. We should have more lobby work, not less.
Maybe we should have like good quality of life instead of lobby work, like really in the living environment, and actually do this kind of accessibility.
Yeah, but we're talking about...
This is a lobbying office for bureaucrats. I was speaking about the business communities around the globe.
Okay, we have time for one more question, I think. I think I saw a hand in the back somewhere. Yeah.
2 hands.
Question for the Greens and Centre Party and Socialist Democrats. You have been promising a lot, like you want to build this and that and basic income. So how are you going to fund it? Are you going to like raise taxes, or are you going to cut the money from somewhere else?
Wait, that was for me?
So it was a question for Greens, Keskerakond and Social Democrats regarding your social programs, namely the basic income.
Basic income, guys.
How do you make it
It's the future. It's not because I'm sitting here, I'm telling it's the future. If you listen to Elon Musk, you listen to Bill Gates, you listen to Mark Zuckerberg, they
have a lot of money.
It's not about the money, it's about the automatization, how the things are going to work.
How do you finance it?
Basic income is the pilot program is going to involve 1,000 people. The budget for that is 4.8 million euros per year. 4.8 million euros per year as an investment to something crucially important for the future. It's less than 0.6% of the city budget. To say that we can't find money for that,
more than the
and
whole
to say that we can
Tallinn
find
budget.
money for building crazy roads.
It's as much money that goes to Mupu, the municipality police.
It's more than the whole North Tallinn budget.
I would say basic income is an interesting idea, but it's something that needs to be decided on a national level, not on a city level.
That is the idea of the pilot program.
Yes.
But to the question that was asked, your social programs, how do you plan to finance them? Will you raise some sort of...
Our social programs, I have to explain what they are first, but we want to guarantee that recipients of some kind of benefit will at least get the vital amount that they need for their water, heat, electricity, regardless of their circumstances. Right? Now, we have, and this is something that hasn't been discussed, we have a lot of experience in running this city. You have other candidates who don't have experience in running a city. Right? We have a candidate from the Social Democrats who has no executive experience of any kind. Why doesn't he have executive experience? Why wasn't he given a ministry? Yeah? If he's suitable to be mayor, why wasn't
Let's focus on the question, not on the Social Democrats.
Yep.
You have some sort of a love-hate relationship with the Social Democrats.
But actually, they have even agreed to this coalition. Today, it was in the news in the morning. They're going to do the coalition, and now they're sitting here fighting.
We want a different city to what it's been in the last 10 years anyway, so this is not a good argument.
So in terms of financing of these social policies, is the money coming out of Tallinn TV or? I guess.
That's what I wanted to actually
Tallinn TV
answer
needs
the
a lot of
question
more
that,
money.
The focus should be on the priorities, and for social democrats, clearly, for example, children and education, this is the priority.
And
not Tallinn TV. It's also like when you have
Tallinn
a
TV
fixed.
is not our priority.
When you have
in the budget, social welfare is 37 million. So if you're saying that a program like basic income is going to be about 4 million, it's a significant increase.
I'm also talking about the Tallinn in the cloud, which is going to reduce the costs of bureaucracy, etc. And once again, guys, really, in less than 10 years, the majority of Estonian political parties are going to be talking about basic income. The rest of the world is already saying the only reason why they're not speaking about it is because they're scared, because it's a new idea.
How will it make the rest?
It's totally unmoral idea.
Hey, he's saying...
Why the lottery are giving people money?
But
and they think it's going to be something
but I
happy.
want to ask, if you're giving
People are
it
not
to
crazy.
the chosen 1,000, it might give us some ideas, but how will it benefit the rest of the
It's a pilot program.
400?
It's a pilot. That's the entire point. It's a pilot program. Why Finland is doing it, why Netherlands is doing it at the moment. And that's the entire point.
You heard it here first.
It
In
will
10
be
years,
It's a pilot program for the
Green
Green
Party,
Century
basic
in
income,
the
remember that.
parliament.
Circus is Tallinn TV and bread
Well,
is
I
not
mean,
income.
But now it's working perfectly. Our social welfare is working perfectly. We have 90,000 people without healthcare, etc. It's fantastic. It's going really, really well.
Let's see what Kadri has to say, because the question was also addressed to the Social Democrats in terms of financing of your social policies.
Yeah, I think that we, of course, we won't raise taxes, but I think that we have to. No. Well, you know, when you have the budget and arguments over the budget, then just you have to know where the focus is, and obviously when you take from one area, then you know there will be less in another area. So I think that I personally I'm in favor of this basic income, but Estonia is not ready for it yet. I've even written an essay about it. I'm all, but
Just
because
like
we don't have yet this level of automation, which is the main reason why you know, basic
there is a
income
pragmatic reason, which is automatization, and then there is the ethical reason, because I'm sorry, the Reform Party was in power for 16 years. Did it work? The Gini coefficient is the highest in European Union, and I'm not saying that inequality necessarily is a bad thing, but it wasn't working, guys. It wasn't working. Now the new coalition is doing some marginal tax changes, which are not necessarily a bad thing, but they were relevant on the 20th century, guys. The world is moving. We have to use the new possibilities. The basic income is one of them.
Let's
this is also
discussion here, because
not
obviously basic income is definitely not one of the topics that comes to mind when we talk about local elections. So
yes.
Do we have time for one last question?
Just at the back there.
Yeah, in the back. Pick one of you.
So listen, guys, firstly, thanks for taking the time. And a comment and a question. Basically, you know, to give a bit of background, I used to be a multimillionaire when I was a big kid. My parents were filthy rich. We went from that to worse than broke, and I've basically earned it back. Usually all these social policies for basic income and all this, you know, helpful stuff is basically saying that, oh, we need to help people like you so you don't have to go through that type of shit. But, pardon my French, but basically the best thing that happened to me was going through that. Now, if you start doing things like social income, you're going to get more leeches in the system. You're not going to attract smart talent, people who can actually add value. I came to Estonia because this is a country that understands that when you steal money from people, which is basically what taxation is, it's theft, and you manage that through a government, you need to respect the fact that you've taken money from people who are working and adding value. When you start distributing that and doing all these socialist ideas, you end up in the Soviet Union again. So,
is there a question?
So the question is, each of you guys, how much do you actually respect the fact that when you get tax money, you need to make sure that you either manage it the most efficient way or don't take it?
You're going to get a big show of hands that everybody's respecting that, I think. So,
well,
maybe
I would like to one thing on tax then, because I would bravely put my hand up and say I would like to increase taxes, because most developed cities have some kind of tourist tax, which is used for specific purposes. It doesn't reduce tourism. It normally increases the value that tourists get out of that city, and it helps to compensate for others who have to put up with the downside of tourism. And I think it's time that Tallinn started to put this on the agenda. Whether it's possible under national law or not, I don't know. but it should be talked about.
Tourist tax.
A tourist tax on a daily basis, on a nightly basis. Or
Can we go to the gentleman that was next to that one and get the last final question? Because I think maybe.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I want to go and address my fellow's question before, because we ended up in some political vague discussion again regarding the city budget. And maybe I'm too German for that, but I actually have the question, like, where does my money go and where are you planning to put it? So to avoid this political aversion of making a clear point, I would suggest maybe for each candidate to say where they would put their budget focus on and where would they take the money from.
So let's say two areas where you're going to put focus that you will increase the city budget, and 2 areas where you're going to take money from.
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. So, Kaspar, you go first.
Basic income pilot program, education, and we would take money off from the unnecessary bureaucracy mostly.
We would quit the city-run companies. For example, the media, the waste system, the shop that the city is running, these things we would quit. And I think there is also a little to take in efficiency, actually, definitely, but not that huge sums, but still.
And where
we
would you
put it in many of the, in reforming the kindergarten systems and also the public transport and the bicycle roads.
Abdul?
Well, I think the question is a bit misleading because the
pedestrian roads.
It's a very straightforward question.
No,
where
it's
do you
not.
put where do you put the focus? Where do you put the focus, and where do you
Well,
change?
it's straightforward in terms of where you put the focus, but the idea that there's somehow you know.
It has to come from somewhere.
Well,
so
yes, but we have a budget. We've worked out what the budget is, what we're going to spend the budget, on. Our priorities are the older people, disabled, health, children.
to the sacrifice of higher taxes, or where do you not put a priority then?
They are used to the money just being there.
Exactly. Urmas?
I think the core is privatization. The second point is indeed reducing the bureaucracy. And I think we are not going to be as royal with the social additional social benefits as my opponents here. But the core problem in Estonia, actually looking to the growth, is actually that we have so many unskilled people. And I think also this is a duty of city government also to invest so that people, also adults, will get a profession. And the second issue is also that we need to have a strong, good, positive results in vocational education, but also educational system, so that as little as possible kids who dropped out will dropping out from the school system. But speaking about we spoke about this income system or citizens' salary. Yes, I think this is a very moral question, and this is not even a question of money. And surely town can do it, can pay to the people extra additional some benefit systems. So, but I think the moral question is, will we give a benefit or something like positive outcome to the people who are not working? And my strong understanding is actually that not speaking about handicapped people or elderly people or children, person who works actually deserves a better life quality.
We don't need to go back there.
This is a basic philosophical issue.
Kadri, regarding the focus and where you would take the money from.
Our focus would be on children, so better kindergartens, better schools, and public transport, bike lanes, and we take the money from Tallinn TV and redundant bureaucracy. So, yeah.
Okay, Lance?
Yeah.
I agree with someone who I can't remember earlier, which is not, I don't think it's quite so simple either, because there are one-off things you can do that are investments that reduce ongoing costs, And I'm absolutely sure, but I haven't seen all the details, that we're wasting a lot of energy, because absolutely everybody who lives in Tallinn is wasting a lot of energy because of the history of the Soviet Union, cheap power, the fact that we live in wooden buildings with no insulation, with all of these things. There's a lot of money to be saved there, and that's essential that we save it, because we are destroying this planet. So although we may live in a green country, it's only green because it's empty. Quite seriously, Estonia is a green country because there's no one living here apart from, 1.2 million in a country the size of Belgium. So what would I spend? What would I want to spend money on? Largely speaking, it's on the pedestrians, on traffic, on smart traffic lights, on improving even the street lighting. Again, saving energy. We need more LED lighting. We need more smart lighting. We need lighting that goes off and on when it's not needed. We need lighting along the promenade in front of the sea because that's safe.
And where would you take the money from?
Well, from these investing in different things, but especially cutting money on the TV side, but making it a more modern way of communicating, using YouTube channels, using interactive things. There's a lot of money to be saved.
Thank you for that. I'm going to give each of you 1 minute closing statements, just to make your last points. Now you have the audience. I hope some of you have made your minds. If you haven't, then you have 1 minute to change their opinion. Personally, I'm more confused now than I was when I started this, so I don't know how this has helped me. But let's do 1 minute closing statements, and let's start with Urmas.
I think it's badly needed for everybody to take part in elections. And please call your friends also, and please vote with your brains. Thank you.
Okay. Kadri?
I'm perhaps repeating myself, but I think that Tallinn could be more cosmopolitan, could attract more international talent, and we could do that by improving the quality of life, because here really we have a chance. We have lots of green spaces. We could be much more green than we are. We should improve public transport, bike lanes, and I think that the future is green and red in terms of social justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance?
I think just a very simple way of putting it, and the old CIO of the Estonian government used to say that the only reason why Estonia got its lead with the ID cards is it copied Finland, it got it for nothing, and it made it compulsory. I'd say still, easiest to see what goes on in Helsinki is quite a good lead up for what goes on here. They have more money to spend. They are making a public transport system that will make people not want to use their cars. Espoo, which is 1/3 of the metropolitan area in Helsinki, is switching so that English will be available to all incomers in education, access to health, and any other city services will be available in English too. They're doing this because it's good for Espoo. Espoo is the center of the tech industry in Greater Helsinki. This is what we want here. This is just a simple thing. Watch your neighbor. They've got more money than you, and they know how to spend it better.
Thank you. Kaspar?
For once, I have to agree with Urmas that you do have to use your brain. And look, guys, I'm not a Superman. I don't know all the answers. It's my first ever debate. But we do have a lot of very intelligent people in the Green Party. There are people who are doing this for their passion, for free, because we don't have any funding, we don't have any money, we don't have any salaried workers. So once again, what I'm telling you is, please, the ones who haven't voted yet, please go and check not only our platform, but everybody's platform. And what I'm trying to say here is the Green Party is the party that wants to use the possibilities that the 21st century has to offer. We do have different ideas. For some, they might be radical, but they only sound radical at the moment. And in a few years' time, I'm sure that none of you is going to find it radical. Plus, with the Green Party, obviously, you're going to get the green ideology. And this is what we're all been talking about here as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yoko?
Yes, I think the future will be colorful. I hope there is place for all sorts of colors. I hope we can make the city a city for people. But there is one thing I have to stress, even though I am really happy, because in a way I think this fight that I came to fight 4 years ago, it's already almost won, because all of us talk about these issues. We want to make the city a better place for people. But I think you need to choose thinking about who will actually manage to get this message through, to have this, who is actually over these issues, on top of these issues, who knows how the city works. And I think because, as my guru Jan Geel, a Danish urbanist, says, you have to work both on the hardware, which means actually fixing the city space, but you also need to work on the software, the people. So it's actually very important that you choose a person who is capable of doing both of these. And of course, it's a very good thing if you do take interest, if you do think, and go and vote. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you. And Abdul, you have the last word.
Well, as I said at the beginning, it's so important that you vote. No matter who you decide to vote for, the most important thing is that you do vote, and as the other candidates have said, you vote with your brain. So that means think rationally rather than maybe listen to someone else who's telling you don't vote this way or don't vote that way. What's important for you? Yeah. What's important for your family? What's important for your community? Yeah. And who's most likely to represent you? Now, the elephant in the room, and it is an elephant, that no one's talked about here, is that we have two candidates here who are not going to go to the city council because they are already in parliament.
Why do you think that?
Well, because that's what always happens.
Let him finish the statement.
Yeah. This is...
10 seconds.
Yeah. This is the one thing that you also have to think about. Which candidate is going to represent my interests? Which candidate is actually going to sit in Publica and actually represent the city council? That's something that you also have to think about.
Thank you. So that brings an end to our debate. I personally would like to thank all the candidates for making the effort to staying here until 10 o'clock and discussing. And I'm very impressed that an initiative like this can be made to happen, where some random guy doesn't know who to vote for and he decides to ask questions to the candidates. And I think only in Estonia could we make this happen. So thank you very much to the candidates who took their time to be here. Thank you all of you to come to participate in this. It just means how much we care about the city where we live in. Can I just see a show of hands? Who is planning to actually vote in the upcoming days? Oh, that's awesome. That's very good. And who has sort of already made up their minds on who to vote? Okay, so still some undecided votes. Okay, so I urge you to check the parties' websites. Actually, 2 weeks ago, when we started to think to organize this debate, and when we were talking to Silver and to Dario from Estonian News, there was no party with material in English, and now most of the parties have materials in English. So I think that says something, that they're embracing our opinion. So we should definitely check their websites and then make up our minds and vote. So thank you once again.
Just a quick word as well on behalf of Astonishing Evenings. We also thank obviously for all the panelists and debaters to coming here, and also all you. It's probably been the longest debate during the election campaign, so really appreciate it on behalf of everyone. Also thanks Telliskivi Creative City, Estonian World and Erinevate Tubade Klubi, and thanks also ERR News for streaming it online. Those of you who want to keep up with the Astonishing Evenings events, just follow us on Facebook, and we'll announce soon new events. So thanks again, and obviously a big thank you for Joao for moderating it. I think he did a great job. Thank you.